All right, all right, all right. Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is currently 5:21 p.m. And of course, today's date is the 7th of May 2026. How are you doing? Good evening, everybody. God bless you for being here. Yes, it's a beautiful Thursday evening. We had a rainy day in the morning and early afternoons, but now it is sunny and beautiful. All right. God is great. Okay. Some of you do know that the UK Prime Minister has been going through some backlash to resign. And a lot of people are calling for his resignation. But in this hearing right here, the United Kingdom Prime Minister Starmer faces Parliament amidst growing resignation calls. Now, is he going to resign? Who knows? But we do know that President Trump had a lot to say about the UK Prime Minister when this whole debacle started with Iran, and when the United Kingdom Prime Minister said he didn't want anything to do with Iran and Israel and the United States, that the United States couldn't land or use their their airspace, or their landing airspace for any takeoff or landing or something like that. And President Trump was really furious at that kind of notion that the United Kingdom Prime Minister would say that the United States could not use their airways. And it's like, whoa, you guys would not support us and we support you every time. So, man, it is what it is. But I guess he has I would say, his own reservations about Israel, Iran, the United States. But one thing is for sure clear is, as President Trump always say, that the United Nation or NATO wouldn't have America's back if it's needed. And it's sure looking like that. But that's not the conversation for today. The conversation for today is Starmer facing Parliament. This happened a couple of days ago, but let's have a good time listening to this. It's pretty much lengthy. It is about 3 hours, but it's a lot of gems in this one. So I don't know what the guy on the left is doing. Is if he's, I guess, taking a nap. Oh, I mean, it's a very hectic job. Okay, it's a very hectic job. So maybe he's taking a nap or just fed up, and it's just maybe he's just bored. But let's see what happens.
UK SV recommendation that developed vetting clearance should be denied to Peter Mandelson. I find that astonishing. As I said out Odyssey, I do not accept that I could not have been told about the recommendation before Peter Mandelson took up his post. I absolutely do not accept that the then Cabinet Secretary, an official, not a politician, when carrying out his review, could not have been told that UKSB recommended that Peter Mandelson should be denied developed vetting clearance. It was a vital part of the process that I had asked him to review. Clearly, he could have been told, and he should have been told. Mr. Speaker, on the same day as the then Cabinet Secretary wrote to me, so that's the 16th of September 2025, the Foreign Secretary and the then Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Sir Ollie Robbins, provided a signed statement to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. The statement says, and again I quote, "The vetting process was undertaken by UK Security Vetting on behalf of FCDO and concluded with DV clearance being granted by the FCDO in advance of Lord Mandelson taking up post in February." It went on to say, and again I quote, "Peter Mandelson's security vetting was conducted to the usual standards set for developed vetting in line with established Cabinet Office policy." Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear to the House. This was in response to questions which included whether concerns were raised what the Foreign Office's response was and whether they were dismissed. Mr. Speaker, that the Foreign Secretary was advised on and allowed to sign this statement by Foreign Office officials without being told that UKSV had recommended Peter Mandelson be denied developed vetting clearance is absolutely unforgivable. This is a senior Cabinet member giving evidence to Parliament on the very issue in question. Mr. Speaker, in light of further revelations about Peter Mandelson in February of this year, I was very concerned about the fact that developed vetting clearance had been granted to him. Not knowing that, in fact, UKSV had recommended denial of developed vetting clearance, I instructed my officials to carry out a review of the national security vetting process. As I set out, I do not accept that I could not have been told about UKSV's denial of security vetting before Peter Mandelson took up his post in January 25. I do not accept that the then Cabinet Secretary could not have been told in September 2025 when he carried out his review into the process. I do not accept that the Foreign Secretary could not have been told when making statements to the Select Committee again in 2025. But, Mr. Speaker, on top of that, the fact that I was not told even when I ordered a review of the UKSV process is frankly staggering. And I can tell the House that I've now updated the terms of reference for the review into security vetting to make sure it covers the means by which all decisions are made in relation to national security vetting. I've appointed Sir Adrian Fulford to lead the review. Separately, I've asked the Government Security Group in the Cabinet Office to look at any security concerns raised during Peter Mandelson's tenure. Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government. That is not how the vast majority of people in this country expect politics, government or accountability to work. And I do not think it's how most public servants think it should work either. I work with hundreds of civil servants, thousands even, all of whom act with the utmost integrity, dedication and pride to serve this country, including officials from the Foreign Office who, as we speak, are doing a phenomenal job representing our national interest in a dangerous world, in Ukraine, in the Middle East and all around the world. This is not about them, but yet it is surely beyond doubt that the recommendation from UKSV that Peter Mandelson should be denied developed vetting clearance was information that could and should have been shared with me on repeated occasions and therefore should have been available to this House and ultimately to the British people. And I commend this statement to the House.
Timmy Bay, not Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement. His reputation is at stake. Everyone is watching. It is finally time for the truth. Earlier today, Mr. Speaker, Downing Street admitted that the Prime Minister inadvertently misled the House. The Prime Minister has chosen not to repeat that from the dispatch box. I will remind him that under the Ministerial Code, he has a duty to correct the record at the earliest opportunity. The Prime Minister says he only found out on Tuesday that Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting. The earliest opportunity to correct the record was Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, almost a week ago. This is a breach of the Ministerial Code. Under that code, he is bound to be as open as possible with Parliament and the public in answering questions today. So let me start with what we do know. We know the Prime Minister personally appointed Peter Mandelson to be our ambassador to the United States. We know that Mandelson had a close relationship with a convicted paedophile. We know that he had concerning links with Russia and China, links that had already raised red flags. We know that the Prime Minister announced the appointment before vetting was complete, an extraordinary and unprecedented step for the role of US Ambassador. The Prime Minister says that it was usual for this because it was a political appointment. So I will remind him and the rest of the Labour front bench who are heckling that Peter Mandelson was a politician who had been sacked twice from government for lying. That meant he should have gone through the full security process. And we also know, finally, Mr. Speaker, that when Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting, he was allowed to continue in the role with access to top-secret intelligence and security information. This goes beyond propriety and ethics. This is a matter of national security. So let me turn to what we do not know. We still do not know exactly why Peter Mandelson failed that vetting. We do not know what risks our country was exposed to, and we do not know how it is possible that the Prime Minister said repeatedly that this was a failure of vetting, went on television and said things that were blatantly incorrect, and not a single advisor or a single official told him that what he was saying wasn't true. At every turn, with every explanation, the government story has become murkier and more contradictory. It is time for the truth. There are too many questions to ask in the allotted time, Mr. Speaker, so I'm now going to ask the Prime Minister just 6 questions, and I have taken the unprecedented step of providing these questions to the Prime Minister in advance. So he has them in front of him. And I have asked for these questions to be put online for the public. They and I expect him to answer. The Prime Minister appointed a national security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. Let's look at how this happened. The Right Honourable Gentleman told me at PMQs in September 2025 that full due process was followed in this appointment. We now know that in November 2024, Lord Keir, the then Cabinet Secretary, told him this process required security vetting to be done before the appointment. He did not mention any of what Lord Keir said in his statement earlier. So, first question, does the Prime Minister accept that when he said on the floor of the House that full due process was followed, this was not true? Secondly, on the 11th of September last year, journalists asked his Director of Communications if it was true that Mandelson had failed security vetting. These allegations were on the front page of a national newspaper, and yet Number 10 did not deny the story. Why? 3. Will the Prime Minister repeat from the dispatch box his words last week that no one in Number 10 was aware before Tuesday that Mandelson had failed his vetting? The Prime Minister says he's furious that he wasn't told the recommendations of the vetting. Yet on the 16th of September, a Foreign Office Minister told Parliament, and I quote, "The national security vetting process is rightly independent of ministers who are not informed of any findings other than the final outcome." This was the government's stated process. So why is the Prime Minister so furious that it was followed? On the 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister, fifth question, Mr. Speaker, on the 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister told me from the dispatch box that the security vetting he had received had revealed Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. How could he say that if he had not seen the security vetting? And finally, Mr. Speaker, Starmer is a Russian defense company closely linked to the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin's war machine. Was the Prime Minister aware before the appointment that Peter Mandelson had remained a director of that company long after Russia's invasion of Crimea? Mr. Speaker, everyone makes mistakes. It is how you face up to those mistakes that shows the character of a leader. Instead of taking responsibility for the decisions he made, the Prime Minister has thrown his staff and his officials under the bus. This is a man who once said, "I will carry the can for the mistakes of any organisation I lead." Instead, he has sacked his cabinet secretary. He has sacked his director of communications. He has sacked his chief of staff. And he has now sacked the permanent secretary of the Foreign Office. All of these people fired for a decision he made. The Right Honourable Gentleman's defence is that he, a former director of public prosecutions, is so lacking in curiosity that he chose to ask no questions about the vetting process. He asked no questions about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. He asked no questions about the security risk Mandelson posed. Apparently, he didn't even speak to Peter Mandelson before his appointment. It doesn't appear that he asked any questions at all. Why? Because he didn't want to know. He had taken the risk. He had chosen his man. Whitehall had to follow. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to ensure he is telling the truth. Or does the Ministerial Code not apply to him? I'm only holding the Prime Minister to the same standard to which he held others. On the 26th of January 2022, the Right Honourable Gentleman said to a previous Prime Minister at this dispatch box, if he misled the House, he must resign. Does he stand by those words, or is there one rule for him and another for everyone else?
Mr. Speaker, let me respond to those points. Firstly, when I found out what had happened on Tuesday evening last, I wanted to have answers to the question who made the decision to recommend to give clearance on developed vetting contrary to the advice, why that was done, and who knew about it, so that I could provide the information to the House, Mr. Speaker. That is the exercise that's been conducted since Tuesday evening and today, so that I could come here today to give the full account to the House, which I've just set out. Mr. Speaker, she asked me about developed vetting security clearance after the appointment. I set out that wasn't me saying that. I read out the evidence of the former permanent secretary about that and the former cabinet secretary in relation to that. And I think the quotes that I've given to the House are clear enough in relation to that. She also asks why Peter Mandelson failed. Mr. Speaker, it's important to make a distinction between the information provided to the review and the recommendation. The information in the review must be protected and has been protected, because otherwise the integrity of the entire system would fall away. But the recommendation doesn't need to be protected and should not have been protected. Mr. Speaker, in relation to her questions, in relation to the answer about full due process, that was the information that I had, that I put before the House, and it was confirmed to be by Sir Chris Wormold, because in September I asked him to conduct a review of the process to assure me that the process was correctly carried out. He did that and wrote to me on the 16th of September, giving me that his conclusions. In relation, Mr. Speaker, to reports in the media, Number 10 was repeatedly asked about the facts surrounding Peter Mandelson's clearance and was assured that the proper process was followed in that case. Mr. Speaker, in relation to those in number 10, let me give the answer. Nobody in number 10 was informed about UKSV's recommendation. Mr. Speaker, just to be clear and for the record, the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary did receive information recently and then sought the necessary and legal advice. Once those checks were completed by the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary, I was told, that is in the last 2 weeks or so, that was entirely the right procedure, to get the legal advice and then to bring it to my attention at the first opportunity. It was the right procedure that was followed by my officials in the last few weeks. Mr. Speaker, in relation to why I was furious about the process, for the very reason, Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe I should have been given this information at the very outset. I strongly believe there were repeated times when I should have been told. I should have been told on appointment. I should have been told when Peter Mandelson was sacked. The Cabinet Secretary should have been told when he reviewed the process. The Foreign Secretary should have been told before she was asked to sign a statement to the Select Committee, and I should have been told when I ordered a review of vetting, Mr. Speaker. In relation to the point she makes about what I said in February in answer to a question of hers, I make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, I had not seen the security vetting file. I did not know that UK SV... The question asked me about vetting. I knew about the due diligence, and that's why I put before the House what I knew about the due diligence in relation to Epstein. The question asked me about vetting, and I knew what the due diligence has said, and therefore I told the House what the due diligence has said. I didn't tell them what security vetting had said because I hadn't seen the file in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the particular details in relation to Peter Mandelson, I acted on all of the information that I had available to me. The simple fact of the matter is I should have had more information. I didn't have that information. The House should have had that information, and I've now set it out in full to the House.
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that my committee did ask. We asked on the record, and we got a partial truth that could hardly be the whole truth. But we are on record as asking the very questions that hecklers on the other side say should have been asked. And the answers are there on the record to see just what we got when we did ask. Exactly. Mr. Speaker, may I just turn to my question? A month before Mandelson's appointment was announced, the then Cabinet Secretary advised that the necessary security clearance should be acquired before confirming a political appointment. That doesn't seem to have been the usual practice. I'm glad that it's changed because it was clearly abused. Because what happened was that somebody, probably Peter Mandelson himself, leaked to the press his appointment as US ambassador, effectively bouncing the government into confirming it. But then when the confirmation did come forward about his appointment, it did not make clear that it was subject to vetting in either the offer letter to Peter Mandelson or in the government's press release. I'm afraid to say, doesn't this look like, for certain members of the Prime Minister's team, getting Peter Mandelson the job was a priority that overrode everything else, and that security considerations were very much second order?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank her for her question? Her committee did ask relevant questions, and that's why I have indicated that it was unforgivable that the Foreign Secretary was asked to sign a statement in response to those very questions without being told about the recommendation. The questions were asked. She was asked to advise and asked to sign a statement without being told the relevant information, and that is unforgivable. As for the appointment before developed vetting, I've changed that process now so that it can never happen again, and she heard me quote the evidence of the former Cabinet Secretary and the former Permanent Secretary in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with the third point she makes? And that is that somehow the Downing Street's wish to appoint Peter Mandelson overrode security concerns. Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. If I had been told that Peter Mandelson or anybody else had failed security, had not been given clearance on security vetting, I would not have appointed them. A deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material from me. A deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material. This was not a lack of asking. This wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. It was a decision taken not to share that information on repeated occasions.
Sir David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's 2022 all over again. Back then, when he stood on this side of the House, and it was Boris Johnson who was accused of misleading Parliament and scapegoating senior officials, the then Leader of the Opposition couldn't have been clearer. The public need to know, he said, that not all politicians are the same, that not all politicians put themselves above their country and that honesty, integrity and accountability matter. So he promised change, Mr. Speaker. He promised to break the cycle and stop the chaos. And he promised a government with, and I quote, more focus on long-term strategy, not the short-term distractions that can animate Westminster. I'm afraid the fact that he even had to make the statement today shows how badly he has failed, how badly he has let down the millions of people across our country who are so desperate for change. He blames his officials. He says he had no idea. He gives every impression of a Prime Minister in office, but not in power. The facts remain, even on his own account. The Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States even after he had been warned about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister announced the appointment before Mandelson had been vetted, despite the clear risk to national security of putting someone unsuitable in that role. And one of his top officials, just 3 weeks into the job, clearly believed the Prime Minister wanted Mandelson to be appointed regardless of what the vetting process turned up. And the Prime Minister has relied on the vetting process to defend his decisions. So why did he ask so few questions personally about the vetting process itself? We all know the truth, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister knew that appointing Mandelson was an enormous risk. He decided it was a risk worth taking. A catastrophic error of judgment. And now that it's blown up in his face, the only decent thing to do is to take responsibility. Back in 2022, the Prime Minister rightly accused Boris Johnson of expecting others to take the blame while he clung on. That was not acceptable then, and it's not acceptable now. So I hope the Prime Minister can at least tell the House this, and we'll be listening very carefully to his answer. Was he given advice by Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary, that the necessary security clearances should be acquired before he confirmed his choice for US Ambassador? And did he follow that advice? Yes or no? Mr. Speaker, after the years of chaos under the Conservatives, we needed a government focused on the interests of the people, the cost of living crisis, the health and care crisis, our national security. We needed a government of honesty, integrity and accountability. So will the Prime Minister finally accept that the only way he can help to deliver that is to resign?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I set out in my statement the full facts. And in September, when the Bloomberg emails came to light, I asked the Cabinet to review the process, then Cabinet Secretary to review the process. He told me the process was as it should have been. And as soon as the information about security vetting came to light last Tuesday, I asked for the facts to be established so I could update Parliament. He asks me about the announcement before developed vetting. He's heard the evidence that I've given to the House from the former Cabinet Secretary and from the former Permanent Secretary. In relation to the advice from Simon Case, Mr. Speaker, when I asked the former Cabinet Secretary to review the process after September 25, he specifically addressed whether the process had been followed by referencing the Simon Case letter and assured me that the process was the right process to have followed. So in answer to his question, that was specifically looked at by Sir Chris Wormold in the review that was conducted in September of last year.
Dame Diana. Sorry, Diana, but...
The Prime Minister has gone on at considerable length about process and procedure. But ordinary people don't really care about process and procedure. They want transparency and they want to know that they can have confidence in the words of elected politicians, like all of us in this chamber. On the question of Peter Mandelson, it was in the 90s that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the Cabinet for the first time because of his dealings with the millionaire Geoffrey Robinson. It was a few years later he had to resign from the cabinet for the second time because of his relationships with the billionaire Hinduja family. Peter Mandelson has a history. Peter Mandelson has a history. And what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson's history, going back now 30 years, and given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
Mr. Speaker, in relation to her question, let me be clear. I should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. As soon as the further revelations came to light, I asked the Cabinet Secretary to review the process so I could be assured about the process. He wrote to me on the 16th of September, setting out the conclusions of that review and assuring me the process had been followed properly.
Simon Hoycher of Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken about process and the reviews and trying to put that which went wrong right. That is to be supported. But he's also asking the House and the country to believe that, notwithstanding a front-page media splash that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting process, that there was nobody in Number 10 or in any government department that even thought to say, is there any truth in this? Could I have a briefing on that? We need to knock this story down. If nobody asked, that is the shameful thing. And if nobody asked, does it not say to the Prime Minister that the operation of his government, which seems to be process, strategy, review, never my fault, is not sustainable and is not welcomed by the country at large?
In answer to his question, the FCDA was repeatedly asked in light of inquiries. The same answer came back because a clear decision had been taken that this information was not going to be disclosed. And it wasn't disclosed to me, let alone to anybody else. So yes, repeatedly the FCDA was asked. The same answer came back as the answer that was given to me. The decision was that I wasn't to know and nobody else was to know. That was wrong.
John MacDonald.
Can I say that on this side of the House, at least, to my honourable friend, many will appreciate his apology today. But many of us will remain bewildered still why that appointment took place, despite the warnings that many of us gave him. And isn't the reality this, that when he sought to realise his ambition to become leader of the Labour Party, with very little base within the party, he became dependent on McSweeney and Mandelson and Labour together to organise, fund his election. And that when he became Prime Minister, the reward for McSweeney was control of Number 10, and for Mandelson, the highest diplomatic office. And the message, the unspoken message to civil servants was, what Mandelson wants, Mandelson gets. This has damaged the party that I've been a member of for 50 years. I urge him to take steps to clear this toxic culture out of our party and take the first step by having an independent inquiry into Labour together.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with what's at the heart of that question in relation to an unspoken message to civil servants? I don't accept that, Mr. Speaker. It is simply not good enough on a question of national security where clearance, the recommendation is clearance be denied, for anyone particularly senior civil servants, to do anything other than provide me with the relevant information, and that is what should have happened in this case.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been very clear about his view of the urgency of his response since he learned of this vetting information. So I want to ask him about the events of last week. He will know that the Intelligence and Security Committee asked for any information relevant to vetting to be supplied to it in the first tranche of information we were to consider. We didn't receive anything about vetting at that time. The Prime Minister has told us now that on Tuesday evening he became aware of the information he has set out. But the Intelligence and Security Committee was not told about the existence of that information. Information the Prime Minister must have recognised was within the terms of the humble address and would need to be supplied to the ISC. We were not told by his officials about the existence of that information until Thursday, after it had been published, its existence had been published in the Guardian newspaper. So I am bound to ask the Prime Minister this. If that information's existence had not been disclosed by the press, would we have been told about it? And if so, why did the ISC have to learn of its existence from the Guardian and not from the government?
Prime Minister.
Thank you for his question, and the answer is yes, it would have been provided to the committee, and I think, as he acknowledged, it has now been provided to the committee. The reason for the delay is on Tuesday night I found out simply that the recommendation had been made to deny clearance, and yet clearance had been given. I wanted to understand who gave that clearance, on what basis, and who knew about it, so I could update the House and obviously make the information available to the committee, and that's what I asked on Tuesday night my officials urgently to do, so that the full picture could have been put before both the House and the committee, and I'll make sure that the full picture is put before the committee.
Alistair Strapper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents are rightly appalled that someone who betrayed not just our country but every single victim of Jeffrey Epstein was able to serve in such a prestigious position. Whatever the judgment in the security vetting file, that decision to appoint him was wrong, and I welcome the Prime Minister's owning an apology for that moment. But many of my constituents are also rightly concerned to learn that not a single democratically elected official in government was informed about that decision. Given this, what undertakings is the Prime Minister instigating right across government to ensure that in the future it's our democratic decision makers who are putting the full picture for these crucial judgments?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him? And Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why I've asked for the entire developed vetting process to be reviewed by Sir Adrian Fulford, and I've made it absolutely clear to this House and to the civil service that my strong view is that the information that was not provided to me could have been provided and should have been provided.
Bumrella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister wants us to focus on process and not his judgment. But this entire episode is the direct result of his decision to make a direct appointment to one of the most senior roles in the FCDO of somebody who was wholly inappropriate for the role. So can the Prime Minister at least confirm to the House that this was a singular error of judgment and that his number 10 operation has not proposed political appointee for any other senior role in the FCDO?
Prime Minister.
In relation to the decision, yes, it was my decision. It was an error of judgment, and that's why I've apologised to the victims of Epstein. I've done it again today, and right to do so. In relation to the second point of his question, whether any other political appointments, I will have to just check on that and get back to him, because I'm not. There are very many appointments made. There are very many appointments made to senior positions, and I will just check that for him.
Rick Corgill.
Mr. Speaker, the House and the public understand the importance of independent security vetting and why sensitive personal information must be protected, but they are also shocked that decisions of such significance could be taken without the knowledge of the Prime Minister. I have worked closely with the Prime Minister and know how seriously he takes national security and accountability to this House. So can the Prime Minister set out what steps he will take to remove any ambiguity. So where there are serious concerns, those risks are flagged to ministers, ensuring that accountability to this House and to the country is always upheld.
Prime Minister. I thank her for her question, Mr. Speaker. That is why last week the Chief Secretary removed suspended the power of the FCDO to make a recommendation or to take a decision contrary to the recommendation of UK SV.
Sir David Davis.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has twice rebuffed first the Leader of the Opposition, then the Leader of the Liberal Democrats, when they said that the then Cabinet Secretary's advice to the Prime Minister was to get the clearance before the announcement. So I'm going to read in one sentence from a document entitled Options for HMA Washington from the Cabinet Secretary of the day to him personally. It says, if this is the route you wish to take, you should give us the name of the person you would like to appoint, and we will develop a plan for them to acquire the necessary security clearances and do due diligence on any potential conflicts of interest or other issues of which you should be aware before confirming your choice. The House doesn't want to hear about what Mr. Wormholt said a year later. That was the advice then. Why didn't he follow it?
Mr. Speaker, he reads out the passage from Mr. Case's advice. The process that was followed was what I understood to be the usual process. In other words, the appointment was subject to the security vetting. It is why, when Sir Chris Wormholt looked at it in September, he addressed the question by reference back to Simon Case's letter, because I wanted to know the process that had been followed was the right process, and that is what Sir Chris Wormholt looked at. He looked at it expressly by reference to the Simon Case letter that has just been read out, and assured me that the right process was followed when he reviewed it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anybody who knows the Prime Minister will know full well that he would never, ever deliberately mislead this House. But the reality is this, Mr. Speaker, ex post facto vetting is utterly pointless when the appointment is political. And the trouble, Mr. Speaker, that we all face is that trust in the Prime Minister and in politics is diminishing as this sorry saga continues. So in the 17 days we have leading to those very important elections, never mind question, those very important elections, what does the Prime Minister propose to do to win back the trust of the country?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his point about vetting in relation to political appointments, I don't agree, but I do agree that the due diligence for direct ministerial appointments should be the same as for any other appointments. It clearly wasn't, and that's why in September I ordered that it be changed in order to make sure it is the same process, whether it's a direct ministerial appointment or any other appointment. In relation to the country, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we remain focused on the cost of living and on dealing with the war on two fronts that we face in this country, and I intend to do that.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, the harshest and most important truth in this entire process is that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom chose to proactively ignore the victims of Jeffrey Epstein when he made the political choice to put Peter Mandelson in as the UK's most senior diplomat in the United States of America, despite knowing that he had maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein himself. We have since seen Peter Mandelson be investigated for potential misconduct in public office, and we, of course, now learn through the media that Peter Mandelson had failed his security vetting. The Prime Minister blames all of this, all of it, on the judgment of others. But I'm interested in his judgment. Does he believe himself to be gullible, incompetent, or both?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his question. I've laid out the relevant facts, it is absolutely clear that nobody is suggesting that this information was made available to me. It clearly wasn't made available. It should have been made available, and I would not have made the appointment had it been made available. That is why I set out the facts in some considerable detail to the House, with relevant quotes from all the relevant players in this.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is being candid about some of the challenges in this process. I'm sure he will share the frustration across this House that revelations keep coming and this matter keeps coming back to Parliament. Now, he says that he has acted to prevent any further challenges in the vetting system for the government for senior appointments. Can he therefore give all of our constituents and this House the reassurance that he has no further sense there will be any challenges to any other senior appointments through the vetting process that this government has made?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why I've asked for a review to be carried out of the security vetting. I have no reason to believe that to be the case, but I want to be assured about the security vetting process, and that's why I've asked Sir Adrian Fulford to look at it so he can give me that further reassurance. I will then, of course, pass that on to the House.
Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has just told us that after he sacked Peter Mandelson, he changed the process so that now an appointment cannot be announced until after security vetting is passed. Why did he do that if he didn't think there was a problem with the security vetting?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in September, it became clear to me that in relation to the due diligence that had been carried out by the Cabinet Office, Peter Mandelson had been asked questions by my staff and given answers which were not truthful. That was exposed by the Bloomberg emails. At that point, I became concerned about the entire process. I asked for the review of the process by Sir Chris Wormold, which he carried out, but I also made it immediately clear that I would change the due process so that whether it's direct ministerial appointments or any other appointments, the same process was gone through. And I also wanted to make it clear that I didn't think that it was right that appointments should be announced before security vetting was gone through in any circumstances, and therefore I changed it straight away.
Rachel Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents are deeply concerned about the appointment of Peter Mandelson, and they want to see complete transparency going forward. I'm really concerned to read that the civil servants in the Cabinet Office may have had this information about a month ago, and it has taken them this long to be able to be in a position where they can share the information with the democratically elected person making this appointment. What can the Prime Minister share with us today so that we don't have to face this type of issue going forward?
Prime Minister.
Can I address that head on? Because what happened was that the information came to the attention of senior civil servants who were in fact doing the compliance work on the humble address. When they saw the information about developed vetting, they took legal advice straight away to ask whether it was legal to disclose that to me. They got that advice, and as soon as the advice was given, they disclosed it to me straight away last Tuesday. That was the right and appropriate thing for them to do. There's no criticism of what they did.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that last September, MI6's finding that Mandelson's compromising business interests was accurate. I mentioned it myself on September the 15th in 2025. He failed his security vetting. We also know the former Cabinet Secretary advised the Prime Minister to carry out security clearance for Mandelson before his appointment. It was reported in the Times yesterday that Mandelson was given strap, very, very highest security vetting, well beyond DV, despite being failed for DV. It is likely that the Americans will have serious questions about what secrets of theirs a compromised British ambassador might have accessed. Despite all this, we also know that the PM and Number 10 were utterly determined to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to DC, come hell or high water. My question is why?
Prime Minister.
Can I assure her that I have order a review of any national security issues arising in relation to what I found out last Tuesday, and I'll obviously update the House when that review is complete.
Dr. Rupa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also thank the Prime Minister for his heartfelt statement. And, if we're judging parties on actions, not words, for reviving the post of anti-corruption czar. It was vacant for 3 of his predecessors, years and years, starting with Boris Johnson's lockdown breaches. So can I ask the Prime Minister, now that we have the heavyweight Margaret Hodge in post, what plans does he have for this broader policy area?
Well, I'm sure that Margaret Hodge will do a very good job in that role, as she's done in so many other roles previously.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Who first suggested to the Prime Minister that Mandelson should be appointed as our ambassador to the United States, or was it just his own idea? Did it never cross his mind that Mandelson was at risk of failing the vetting process? And before sacking Oliver Robbins last week, did the Prime Minister ask him why he overruled the verdict of the security vetters, and if so, what was his explanation?
I did ask him, and I didn't accept his explanation. That's why I sacked him.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the beginning of February, in February 2026, we learnt that Peter Mandelson had shared highly sensitive government information with Jeffrey Epstein from the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. At that juncture, if I was in his shoes, I would have been forensic in recognising a security risk and wanting detailed answers. What's not adding up for me is why we are now in mid-April before we get this information, and why the Prime Minister didn't drill down to ensure that we had the security information, which clearly we learnt that Peter Mandelson had breached.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was at that point that I did order the review of the security vetting, because I was concerned that it had failed. In fact, because of information I wasn't given, it hadn't failed. It had actually given the recommendation that clearance should be denied. The fact that when I ordered a review of UKSV, senior officials in the Foreign Office didn't at that stage, if at no other stage, bring to my attention the information they hadn't told me is astonishing, because I was ordering a review of the process, which which looked as though it had failed, when in fact it had flagged the relevant concerns.
Sir Oliver Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the point from my honourable friend, the member for New Forest West, I think the Prime Minister does owe it to the House to tell us what Sir Ollie Robbins' response to him was when he said he'd overruled that advice, because in my experience, senior officials are actually very keen to deliver on the wishes of ministers, particularly a newly elected Prime Minister. And my concern here is that implicitly, as other members have made the point, Sir Ollie Robbins was responding to a desire from the Prime Minister, because it was perfectly clear in all of the newspapers the allegations were out there about Peter Mandelson, but the Prime Minister decided to proceed anyway. The official wished to deliver on the desire of the Minister. That's why he overruled the advice, and I fear also gave him the Prime Minister a degree of plausible deniability.
Prime Minister.
Let me answer that. In relation to Sir Ollie. Let me start by saying he's had a distinguished career, and I must say that, and I do say that. I still, notwithstanding that, he should have provided this information to me, and he could have provided it to me. He's giving evidence tomorrow, but I can say to the House that when I spoke to him on Thursday, his view to me was that he couldn't provide this information to me because he wasn't allowed to provide the information to me. I don't want to put words in his mouth, because it's very important he gives his own evidence. In relation to the question that's being asked of me, when I said why wasn't this shared with me, he did. I've been asked what questions I put to him, and I've been asked the answer, and I'm trying to give that answer. I'm trying to give it without putting words into Ollie Robbins' mouth, because I don't think that's fair of me to do so. But what he said to me was essentially that he took the view that this process did not allow him to disclose to me the recommendation of UKSV. No doubt he'll be asked further questions about that. He did. That is the reason that he gave to me.
Sarah Champion.
There are 61 conflicts raging around the world. I've never known international diplomatic relationships to be more fractured. FCDO is pushing through 40% cuts of aid and 25% cuts of staff, all under the watch of the Permanent Under-Secretary. So can I ask the Prime Minister what risk assessment was carried out before he was removed?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was dealing with a very serious issue. I asked my team to establish urgently the facts on Tuesday night. I spoke to the former Permanent Secretary on Thursday night. As a result of the information I had and the exchanges I had, I made it clear that I no longer had confidence in him.
Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, please. Sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
No, order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave. Phil Brettle.
Speaker, when Sir Ollie Robbins came before the Foreign Affairs Committee on the 3rd of November last year, he was asked by my honourable friend, the member for Liverpool Walton, whether, in the context of vetting, Lord Mandelson's appointment was escalated. Citing a need to maintain the integrity of the vetting system, Sir Ollie replied, and I quote, "I certainly cannot comment on that, I'm afraid." Does the Prime Minister not find it perverse that when specifically asked by members of this Parliament about Mandelson's vetting, Sir Ollie declined to discuss the very topic we are now debating in this House?
Prime Minister.
Well, I've read that evidence, and it remains my strong view that the recommendation of UKSV could and should have been shared with me, and could have and should have been shared with the Foreign Secretary, and thus with the Select Committee, and it should have been.
Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the question raised by my right honourable friend, the member for Hartsware, Mr. Speaker, is it not pretty poor form that the Prime Minister shovels the blame for this, particularly onto Ollie Robbins, a fine and experienced civil servant who was appointed 2 days after the Prime Minister's Mandelson announcement? Surely, Mr. Speaker, the buck stops at the top.
Prime Minister.
Can I say again, Sir Ollie Robbins has had a distinguished career, and I've worked with him over a number of years. Nonetheless, he could and should have shared this crucially relevant information with me before Peter Mandelson took up his post, and he should have done at various points after that. And it was because of that that I lost confidence in him. That doesn't mean he hasn't got a distinguished career. He does have a distinguished career.
John Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Prime Minister for his statement. I know the Prime Minister is aware that public confidence in politicians needs to drastically improve in order to retain the public's trust. With this in mind, Reform has been accepting donations from millionaires in cryptocurrency, making it difficult to trace who actually funds them. Does the Prime Minister agree that Reform relying on millionaires' dodgy cryptocurrency is a security risk?
Mr. Speaker, we've taken a number of measures in relation to crypto.
Relevant, don't worry, let's move on. Stephen Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the readout of the Prime Minister's meeting on the 15th of April on vetting, it says, and I quote, "There is no evidence that the decision to grant DV, despite the UKSV advice, had been disclosed to anyone outside FCDO and UKSV until the vetting document itself was shared with the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office. Is he therefore saying that neither the Chair of the Joint Committee on Intelligence nor the National Security Advisor were aware of this security risk with our most important strategic ally until the vetting document itself was shared with Cat Little?
Yes, Prime Minister.
So sorry. I understand that to be the case. Obviously, no, I'm only saying that it wasn't my decision to withhold it. I understand, if I've understood Sir Ollie's position correctly, that his argument is he can't share it, or he couldn't share it with anyone. With anyone. That's as I understand it. It certainly wasn't shared with the National Security Advisor. I don't think it was shared with anybody else. But it's a question that, as far as I know, it hasn't been until it was seen by my officials, legal advice was taken and shown to me. It wasn't shared with anybody else.
Rinder Singh Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for his statement and the clarity contained within that, and for his apology again. Despite the protestations of leaders of parties opposite and members opposite, and including some on these benches as well, I'm sure everybody in this House agrees that the government of the day should take advice of our intelligence and vetting services and act on it. Yes. In view of everything we have heard, and this is a fundamental question for me, how can government act on intelligence service and vetting advice if ministers never get to receive that advice?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in many instances, it's the recommendation of UKSV that is effectively the final decision. So, of course, it's known. In the Foreign Office, there is the additional part of the process in which the final decision is, in fact, taken by the Foreign Office officials rather than the recommendation of UKSV. That is what has now been suspended, so that in the Foreign Office as well, the recommendation of UKSV is what matters.
David Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows that he is the main character in an ongoing national scandal. And given all the blame apportioned in his statement, it is incredible that only one person has lost their position. But would the Prime Minister also recognise it is incredible to learn that in Northern Ireland a political appointment was made following the refusal to clear an individual for security access, that they have continued in their post, engaged on issues connected with the legacy of our troubled past with full security clearance, despite security service concerns, and they continue to this day. So if the Prime Minister is ordering a review by Sir Adrian Fulford, will he ensure it includes within its terms of reference or separately a deep dive into the appointment of Marie Anderson, the Northern Ireland Police Ombudsman, why she was appointed, why the security information was ignored, and how this can be the case?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him? And I will ensure the review covers all the relevant issues and material, and I'll take into account what he's just said.
Oregon.
The Prime Minister has the right to expect that his senior civil servants will always tell him the truth and the whole truth. He will recall that Mrs. Thatcher used to say of Lord Young that she liked David because he always brought her solutions and not problems, while her other ministers brought her problems. Does he believe that there is a problem within the civil service, that promotion and advancement is on the back of not giving your ministers problems, and that on this occasion the senior official at the FCDO knew that if he did tell the Prime Minister what he ought to have told the Prime Minister, he was bringing him a problem?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him. Can I just be clear? We have thousands of civil servants acting every day with integrity and professionalism, doing the job to their very best ability. As I understand what Sir Ollie is saying, he is saying that he believed he couldn't give me this information, that he was prohibited from doing so. I disagree with him. I think he could and should have given me this information, but I don't think that that is any reason to suggest that across the civil service people act for any improper motive.
Sir Bernard Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out that the developed vetting process has always been highly protected, because otherwise it wouldn't work. People would not give information to the developed vetting process if they thought that any detail of that was likely to be disclosed, or even if the result, the assessment, low, medium or high risk, was likely to be exposed. And that is why the previous Labour government in 2010 wrote into the Constitutional Reform and Governance Act, Section 3, in order to prohibit that disclosure. And if he is now saying that developed vetting is now going to be available to ministers on a routine basis, wouldn't he be undermining the very process upon which we depend for our national security?
Minister.
With respect, I don't agree with his analysis. I certainly agree that the information that's provided into the process by the applicant has to be protected, because, as anybody who's been through the process will know, it's an incredibly detailed and intrusive process, and it's very important that individuals give full and truthful accounts of all the questions they're given to them. That is why that needs to be protected. I do not accept that means that the recommendation of the UK SV cannot be shared with ministers, including the Prime Minister. I think there's a distinction between the two. I accept the first. I utterly reject the second.
Jane Kirkham.
The Foreign Office shared the outcome of the vetting process, but not the conclusions of the vetting reports. Not just the detail, but the conclusions too. If the Prime Minister is going to own a decision, he needs to know what is within it. What changes will he be making to stop this happening again?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for a question, and that's why I've asked for a review of the entire process, so it can be looked at from start to finish, including the question of whether there should be any circumstances in which the recommendation of UK SV could not be followed.
Lisa Small.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to try again, because a number of members and right honourable members have asked a question, and I'm not quite sure I heard an answer from the Prime Minister. Why did the Prime Minister choose to ignore the advice from the then Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case, to seek security vetting before confirming Peter Mandelson as his pick?
I understood the procedure to be that the appointment was made subject to the security vetting. That's what I was told. But the question she raised is the question I raised in September, which is why I asked Sir Chris Walmall to look at the process, and in particular, he looked at the advice, the letter from Simon Case, to answer the question: was the process followed? And he gave me the answer that he thought right, having concluded that process.
Debbie Abraham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for his statement. But for clarity, could he confirm to whom and when the UK security vetting report outcomes were made available, and also what guidance is given to senior officials on matters that must be escalated to their ministers?
Prime Minister.
The process was that UKSV informs FCDO of their findings and their recommendation, and then there's an escalation process. It's part of the process in the sense that it is the FCDO in these particular cases to make the final decision, which is what they did in this case.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Speaker, I want to return again to the real nub of what this is. The Prime Minister knew, as we all knew, about his representation as to who should actually be the ambassador. In this particular case, a man that had been sacked twice out of Cabinet, but more than that, in the public domain at the time were all his links clear with the Chinese companies and his meetings with Xi. Furthermore, his time in Starmer, where he stayed there after 2014 and the invasion, not just for that, but his meetings with Putin, and, of course, his relationship with Deripaska, who was negotiating on the tax levels and the tariffs on aluminium when he was the EU Commissioner responsible. So with all of that going on, his announcement of this man into the ambassadorial position, why did he think that therefore he didn't know something about him? He knew he was corrupt, he was corrupting, and he was the wrong choice. Surely that's why he overturned Case's review, Case's advice to have the review before he made the decision.
Exactly. Prime Minister.
No, that's not the case. But the judgment call to appoint him was my judgment call, and that was an error, and I've apologised for it, particularly to the victims of Epstein. But the developed vetting process was carried out in the way I've indicated to the House. I should have been told at the time of the recommendation. Had I been told, I wouldn't have made the appointment.
Neil Duncan Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's statement may well be about process and procedure, but surely, Prime Minister, the real issue is why, when Peter Mandelson's reputation was already known, was he ever considered for such an important role?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've accepted that was my decision, and I've apologised for it.
Ellie Chalmers, Dr. Ellie Chalmers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister says it's staggering and unforgivable that he wasn't told about the vetting. But what's really staggering and unforgivable is that he appointed Peter Mandelson before the vetting, that he appointed Peter Mandelson knowing about his friendship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. What's unforgivable is that the Prime Minister was more concerned with pandering to Donald Trump than with standing with the victims and survivors. Now, the Prime Minister has not accepted a simple sorry from his civil servant. He thinks that's inadequate. The country thinks a simple sorry is inadequate from him. Will he take personal responsibility for his staggering and unforgivable errors of judgment and resign?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out to the House the facts of what happened in this particular case, and I am staggered, and I find it unbelievable I wasn't given the information I should have been given.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister made the political decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, but central to that decision, along with other policy and political position decisions, would have been the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. So can the Prime Minister confirm to the House whether Morgan McSweeney passed all his security vetting, and confirm whether or not Morgan McSweeney ever handled documents for which he had anything other than the appropriate level of clearance?
Prime Minister.
All the appropriate and necessary developed vetting has taken place in number 10, and everybody has passed that. Everyone passed it.
Francois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If, as we've been assured, there was no law that prevented the Permanent Under-Secretary telling the Prime Minister the outcome of Mandelson's developed vetting, then presumably by the same token, there was no law that prevented the Prime Minister from asking. So can he be very clear with the House on one point? Did he, as Prime Minister, ever ask the question, did Mandelson fail his vetting? And if he did ask that question, who did he ask that question of, and when did he ask it?
Prime Minister. Peter Mandelson was given developed vetting clearance. That was the clear position. He was given clearance. That's the facts as I've set them out.
Clive Efford.
The Prime Minister has always behaved with the utmost integrity and honour when he's been dealing with this House, and he is an eminent lawyer who understands the consequences of deliberately coming here to mislead Parliament. On top of that, he also understands the likelihood of a paper trail unravelling such a deception. So it's inconceivable that he would intentionally mislead this House. But does he agree with me that all of the documents relevant to this matter must be made public in accordance with the humble address that was passed on the 4th of February, and that no ministers or officials should engage in trying to prevent any of those documents being made public?
Yes, we will comply with the humble address in full. That is the process that's going on.
Mr McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said today, "I know many members across this House will find these facts to be incredible." He's right. We do, along with his staggering lack of curiosity and his inability to take on board warnings about his good friend Peter Mandelson. Because the Prime Minister was given a due diligence document by the Cabinet Office, which told him several reasons why Peter Mandelson should not be appointed. Fired twice from government, business dealings in Russia and China, and the fact that he'd maintained a relationship with Epstein after his imprisonment for paedophilia. The Prime Minister knew this, but appointed him anyway. Why, Prime Minister? Why?
Prime Minister.
Peter Mandelson was asked various questions on the back of the due diligence exercise, and he didn't tell the truth in those answers. But look, the decision to appoint him was an error. It was my error, and I've apologised for it.
Sir Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is accepted by many on these benches that the Prime Minister did not know the outcome of the vetting. But the Cabinet Secretary came on Tuesday, and she had clearly spent a month researching whether or not she could provide the advice that she did. So she clearly thought very carefully about the information that she brought. When the Prime Minister then launched an investigation, rather than coming straight to the House with the information that she had provided, was that because the information was insufficient to present to the House? And if so, when was he planning to come to the House?
Prime Minister. Yeah, it was insufficient because all it told me was that the recommendation of UK SV was to deny clearance. What it didn't tell me was who then provided the clearance, why did they do it, and who knew. And they were questions that the House obviously would want to raise with me, and that's why I urgently asked for those facts to be established so I could come to the House today and provide the full account that I have provided to the House.
Colin Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ballot vetting should be carried out before someone has, and I quote, frequent and uncontrolled access to top-secret material or any access to top-secret or coded, otherwise known as strapped material. The Prime Minister has promised full transparency, so I ask him three questions. Did Peter Mandelson have access to any top-secret or strapped material before his DV clearance on the 29th of January? Did Peter Mandelson have any restrictions placed on his access to top-secret or strapped material during his time in Washington? And if so, has the Prime Minister assured himself that Mandelson did not leak any of this material, just as he had leaked commercially confidential material to Jeffrey Epstein under Gordon Brown?
I do not understand that he had access to strapped material before he took up his post as ambassador. He did have access after he took up his post, and that's why I have ordered a review of any security concerns that may arise.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we all find it staggering, don't we, that someone can fail their security vetting and still be appointed to such a sensitive and critical role. And it's even more staggering, as we've heard, that the Prime Minister wasn't informed of that failure. Now, I agree with what the Prime Minister said. He didn't need to know the details, but he did need to know that he'd failed the security vetting. And it's in terms of the detail that I want to ask the Prime Minister this. If people didn't know what the concerns were on security for Peter Mandelson, how could any minister, how could any official, how could any other state deal with him on sensitive security issues? I understand the Prime Minister's doing an inquiry into that, but it's very important that Parliament has oversight of that issue, because I'm very concerned that there's been another failure there to manage our security interests.
Prime Minister, I thank him. In a case such as this, in relation to such a sensitive post, I don't think it's right that somebody should be appointed at all if the UKSV are recommending that clearance is not given. So that will be my position on this.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was privileged to serve as Security Minister, the Prime Minister was my shadow, and dealing with matters of the most significant national security, he was straightforward with me, as I was with him. So I hope he'll answer this straightforward question. The humble address makes clear that the ISC will see any material related to national security or international relations. In the course of our work, we've clearly liaised with the Cabinet Office. When did the Cabinet Office know about this failure in vetting? Who knew? And why didn't they bring that material to the ISC when they found it? For we hadn't received it when he found out that this vetting had failed, and yet others must have known that it had failed.
Prime Minister.
Would you just excuse me? The situation was that as part of the work that was being done on the humble address, this information came to light. Senior officials immediately took legal advice on whether it could be disclosed. Having got that legal advice, they immediately disclosed it to me. I think that was the proper process. I think it has now been disclosed to the committee, albeit, I think, on the Thursday rather than the Tuesday. But that's the process. And just to defend that process, I do think it was right for the senior officials, having got this information, to get legal advice on whether they could disclose it and who to. I think that was the right thing to do. As soon as they got that advice, they brought it to my attention.
Lawrence Turner.
He's disgraced himself and by extension brought shame upon these two houses of which he was formerly a member. Does the Prime Minister agree that the famous Armstrong memorandum on the conduct of the civil service was correct and holds true today when it said, "It is the duty of a civil servant to make available to the Minister all the information and experience at his or her disposal which may have a bearing on the policy decisions to which he is committed or preparing to make, and to give to the Minister honest and impartial advice without fear or favour, and whether that advice accords with the Minister's view or not."
Prime Minister.
Yes, I do agree with that, and that's why this information could and should have been shared with me at the first opportunity, and that was before Peter Mandelson took up his post as Ambassador.
Lewis Savile-Roberts.
The Prime Minister is hiding behind a thicket of legalese and procedure, but he has a track record of appointing Labour's most favoured sons and daughters to plumb government jobs and into the House of Lords. In Wales, we know all about Labour's crony culture. Who could forget UK Labour's favourite First Minister, Vaughan Gething, propped up by number 10 in spite of dodgy donations, and now tipped for a peerage. But the timing, Mr. Speaker. How will he explain to his party his role in bringing down Labour's century of dominance in Wales in the forthcoming elections?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm addressing the question today about the process in relation to Peter Mandelson. I've set that out in some detail to the House and answered a number of questions.
Afsana Begum.
December 2024, the Prime Minister said in announcing Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador that he had unrivalled experience. This was despite the gravity of what was known about his record and available publicly. Is it not the case that Peter Mandelson's political appointment, which was personally decided by the Prime Minister and announced in public before the security vetting was completed, needed to progress and had to happen? However, it happened because of Mandelson's role in the Prime Minister's own leadership campaign and because it served the interests of one particular faction in the Labour Party.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't accept that is a reason for withholding from me the information about security clearance.
John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The result of the Prime Minister's terrible failure of judgment is that for over a year this country's interests were represented in the United States by someone that our own security services deemed to be a security risk. Will he assure us that an investigation will take place into all aspects where our national security may have been damaged, and that the results of that will be made available to the Intelligence and Security Committee and, where possible, to Parliament?
Prime Minister.
Yes, I will.
Diane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe there's two sides to this. One is about process and the other one is about judgment. On process, I believe the Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister was not told about the security vetting clearance, and had he have known, he would have sacked it. That we don't have a problem with, but the problem is, why wasn't he told that, and who's actually running the country, and whether other ministers are kept in the dark by civil servants. On judgment issue, it was wrong and completely wrong in the first place to put Mandelson forward as an ambassador. Will the Prime Minister write to me confirming this week that no one is in position who has failed the advanced security vetting process of all political appointments that have been made?
That is included in the review that I've set up, and as soon as I've got the findings, I'll share them with the House.
Dave Dougal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This saga is drawing to a close, and it will come to a conclusion with the Prime Minister's resignation, whether he can accept that or not. What I can't accept is the ask me no secrets and I'll tell you no lies regime that he expects us to believe prevailed at the very top of government between officials, and not just ministers, but the Prime Minister. He talked a lot today about what he didn't know and what he wasn't told. Well, he knew that Mandelson had a serious human frailty for other people's wealth. We knew that Mandelson was involved with the Russians. We knew that Mandelson was sacked twice as a government minister. Can the Prime Minister explain what was Mandelson's actual qualities that he was pursuing in the role as US Ambassador, and what steps has he taken to contain the serious and measurable breach in national security that his appointment of Peter Mandelson facilitated?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've made it clear it was an error to appoint Peter Mandelson. There is a review going on into any security issues that may arise.
Fleur Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister saying that he should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. In November in the Foreign Affairs Committee, I asked about who sees vetting and was told by Sir Ollie Robbins, obviously the vast majority are relatively straightforward, ones that require more senior judgment and potentially a discussion about managing and mitigating risks are escalated appropriately. Questions being asked by the Foreign Secretary or ministers or officials in number 10 should have been a signal to the civil servants to escalate this matter, given the controversial nature of this political appointment. So I would like to ask the Prime Minister whether concerns about links to Epstein, to other countries or anything else were raised by him in conversations about his appointment at just before the time of his appointment that would have signalled that civil servants should escalate this.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there were two different processes. One was the due diligence process carried out by the Cabinet Office, in which Peter Mandelson was asked questions. Separately, there was the developed vetting process, in which the recommendation of UK SV was not shared with me until Tuesday evening.
Harriet Baldwin.
It seems to me that there are two different ways in which a minister can inadvertently mislead this House. One is by the things that they say, but one is by the things that they don't say. And that is why I'm particularly interested in the letter that my right honourable friend, the member for Goole and Pocklington, raised, the one from Lord Case, because that seems to have been written to the Prime Minister in November 2024, advising that a political appointment to an ambassadorial role ought to be preceded by full security vetting when it was before it was announced. Now, it was announced by the Prime Minister in December 2024. Did he write on his decision there that he wanted it to be subject to him passing the full security vetting? What did he write on his box note?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understood it to be subject to developed vetting, but it was because of the process that in September 25 I asked Chris Wormald to do a review for me of the process, and he did that by reference back to the Simon Case letter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister is aware of the damage that this saga has done to public trust in politics and in politicians. However, I would like him to confirm that his focus and the focus of his government is on the issues that matter most to my constituents in Banbury, in particular tackling the cost of living.
Prime Minister.
Well, absolutely, Mr. Speaker. The focus of me and the government is on the fact that we're facing a war on two fronts with serious consequences for our country, and that we absolutely need to deal with the cost of living, which is the number one issue for all of our constituents up and down the country.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How did views from the United States administration affect the decision in the Foreign Office to persist with Mandelson as UK ambassador to Washington, D.C. after the vetting advice was received there?
Prime Minister.
I don't believe that they did. This was UK security vetting carried out in the way I've described to the House. The issue is that the recommendation was not shared with me. That was a matter here in the United Kingdom.
Periel Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for his statement? Could the Prime Minister provide the House with an update on the proposed legislation to remove peerage from disgraced peers like Peter Mandelson, who has fallen so far below what is expected of those serving in the House of Lords?
Prime Minister.
Yes, I've made a commitment in relation to that legislation and work is progressing on it.
Then Caroline Downage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. At the risk of stating the obvious, the Prime Minister has based his defence today and over this whole Surrey saga around his claim that he wasn't told. He wasn't told that Mandelson failed security vetting. In fact, he said 11 times in his statement that he wasn't told. I'm just wondering how many times and on which specific dates did he himself directly ask for that information?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's not a claim I wasn't told. I wasn't told, and I don't think anybody is disputing that. The clearance was given on the 29th of January 2025. That information was not provided to me. In September, I did ask specifically about the process. I did ask about the process. Sir Chris Walmond has made it clear to me that in carrying out that review, he was not told about the security clearance recommendation that was made. I think on both occasions that information should have been provided both to me and to the then Cabinet Secretary.
Chris Hinchcliffe.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister for his statement. In answer to my honourable friend earlier in this statement, the Prime Minister said that he delayed coming to this House so that he could answer, amongst other questions, why UK SV was overruled. It seems wholly incredible that this decision was made on a personal whim by a senior civil servant, and is it not that it was made because of the political pressure from Number 10 to advance a man who a particular faction in the Labour Party has looked to for moral and spiritual leadership for years? So can the Prime Minister explicitly now confirm his understanding of why the decision to overrule UK SV was made?
Well,
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't accept that the view of anyone about Peter Mandelson provides an explanation for not providing me with the information that he had. The recommendation was not to grant him security clearance. We're talking about a very serious issue on a very sensitive case. I clearly should have been given that information, whatever the pressures that are always there in government every day.
Robert General.
The Prime Minister's aides briefed that he's furious, angry Starmer. But why is it that he only ever seems to get angry when he's trying to save his own skin? Yes. Is he not angry about the 600 men who crossed the English Channel on small boats on Saturday? Is he not angry about the people who are queuing up for fuel at the forecourts and can't afford the Chancellor's taxes? Isn't the truth that his government is now so paralysed that its only agenda is cleaning up the mess left by the paedophile pal, Peter Mandelson?
I think any minister of any government that hadn't been provided with this relevant information would rightly be frustrated and angry.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to take a moment during the statement to focus on the young women who were exploited, abused, raped by Jeffrey Epstein and his friends. Years of being trafficked for rape, no one to turn to, and years of people not believing them. The idea that Mandelson would call Epstein's conviction wrongful is disgusting. And I cannot imagine how it felt for the survivors to hear that. The PM was right to sack him, so can I ask the Prime Minister to take the opportunity again to say to those young women that this House believes them and this government stands by them, and is he confident that no person with financial or personal links with sex traffickers would receive DV in the future?
Can I thank her? And she's right to focus on the victims in this, and that's why I started this statement by making it clear that this was a judgment error on my part, and the apology I have made is to the victims, because I know the impact that this will have had on them, who have already suffered so very much.
Katie Lamb.
My right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, asked this question, but I don't believe received a response. Was the Prime Minister aware that Peter Mandelson was a director of Starmer before he was appointed?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I acted on the information that was provided to me in the due diligence process. The information that was dealt with in the security vetting process has not been made available to me, nor can that detail be made available to me. It's the recommendation that should have been made available to me.
Arthur Brash.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I find most difficult to understand in this process is that when this scandal erupted in September of last year, and before the Prime Minister came to this place and elsewhere to make statements about it, statements that he must have known would have involved talking about the vetting, why he simply didn't order officials to share the vetting with him. Why didn't he, and does he regret not doing it?
Well, I did ask Sir Chris Wormald to carry out a review. I worked on the basis that all the relevant information would be shared with him. It was only last week that I found out from Sir Chris that he himself had not been provided with information that he should have been provided for when he was carrying out the review on my behalf.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I take the Prime Minister back to the question asked by the member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington some while ago, when she asked a quite simple question: why the Prime Minister didn't ask any questions whatsoever about the nature of the security clearing that Mandelson had achieved, or why there was any doubt about him, or was he so obsessed with his determination to appoint this tainted figure to be the ambassador to Washington, he just wanted to ignore the rest and the officials just went along with it? Why didn't he ask the simple, straight question?
Mr. Speaker, Peter Mandelson was given security clearance, and that was clear to everyone, including myself. What I didn't read, he was given clearance. He was cleared. He wouldn't have started the role if he hadn't been given clearance. As soon as it came to my attention last week that that was against the recommendation of UK SV, I did ask for the information I've now put before the House.
Melinda Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all agree that Peter Mandelson should never have been appointed, and the Prime Minister has said this clearly and consistently and taken responsibility, including by apologising. That is the right thing to do. Can the Prime Minister give further assurance that the Government will continue to comply with the humble address in full?
Yes, I can give that assurance. We will.
John Lamont.
We got that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said various things over the course of the last few weeks and months, which have now turned out not to be true around the vetting process of Peter Mandelson. Does the Prime Minister accept he inadvertently misled the House of Commons?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
No, I did not mislead the House of Commons. I accept that information that I should have had, and information that the House should have had, should have been before the House. But I did not mislead the House, and that's why I've set out the account in full.
Anybody else? Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Bloomberg files, which caused the Prime Minister to sack Peter Mandelson, revealed that Mandelson had been leaking confidential government information to a convicted paedophile during Gordon Brown's government. In his role as ambassador to Washington, there will have been access to highly sensitive and top-secret documents. So, knowing that this was his previous behaviour, is there any investigation by the government or security services into potential leaks during Mandelson's tenure as ambassador?
That's why I've asked for a review to be carried out in relation to the material that could have caused any issues in relation to national security.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On the 12th of September, it was revealed in the Independent newspaper that Mandelson did not pass vetting by MI6 and therefore by UKSB. On the 16th of September, in this chamber, my honourable friend, the member for Tiverton and Minehead, made the same claim in the presence of the Minister, the Right Honourable Member for Cardiff South and Penarth. On hearing this information, did the Minister or the Prime Minister feel the need to ask if the specific claim there was true? And in the response that was given that DV clearance was granted by the FCDO, as a KC, how did he not see the clear difference between the question that was asked and the answer that was given? And does he not agree with me that, in his own words, his explanation beggars belief?
Prime Minister. Mr Speaker, at various points questions were asked and questions were therefore put to FCDO. The answer back was the same because they took the view that was not information they could share with anyone, including myself.
Dr. Ellison.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Early today, NBC released an interview with hospice worker Rachel Benavides, who was 22 years old when she became one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. For 27 years, she has been waiting for the crimes committed against her to be recognised. And as she told NBC, and I quote, "Until we are heard, until survivors are heard and believed, then I don't think there's ever going to be justice." Does the Prime Minister agree that we owe it to the hundreds of victims like Rachel to put them first in these debates, not political point scoring, and that he was absolutely right to sack someone like Peter Mandelson, who refused to believe these victims, and if he did not care?
Well, I do agree with her, and can I thank her for making sure that the victims are central in this, as they should be.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister's been on his feet now for nearly 2 hours. So can I put it to him that the most charitable explanation that can be put forward to explain this sorry saga is that it has been a bad, probably terminal case of the three wise monkeys. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Yes. Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've set out the procedure in some detail. Information should have been provided to me. It was not provided to me. If it had been provided, I would not have allowed the appointment of Peter Mandelson to proceed in the way that it did.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As we have heard, it's absolutely staggering that vital information on UKSB recommendations can be withheld from ministers taking decisions. Can the Prime Minister assure the House that in the review he is commissioning, that we examine whether any other instances in which UKSB recommendations against granting DB status, whether there are any other instances of that over not just the period of this government, but the last 14 years, because they have potential to have very serious security implications.
Well, I do think that needs to be subject to the review, and that's why I've put, amongst the reasons I've put the review in place.
Christine Jardine. Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It must be clear to the Prime Minister that many of us in this House are totally scunnered with this whole mess. But believe me, that's nothing compared to what I'm being told in the doors in Scotland by voters who feel that they expected and were right to expect more from this government after what they were promised. We've focused on process today, but the Prime Minister wouldn't have had to come here, wouldn't have had to stand at the dispatch box, answer all these questions, if he had not made the decision, which he accepts was wrong, to appoint Peter Mandelson. That's the root of this whole thing. So having accepted responsibility, what does the Prime Minister think the consequence should be for that, and how do we restore faith?
Can I just help the Prime Minister and help everyone in the room? There's a lot still trying to catch my eye with a lot now. Please help each other. Let's speed up the questions. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I've accepted the error judgment on my behalf, but I was not provided with information. Had I been provided with it, I wouldn't have made the appointment.
Keir Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This morning, the Scottish Minister said that to deal with an unconventional US administration, we needed an unconventional ambassador. So, Prime Minister, does unconventional now mean appointing a man to a senior position when we know his lies, his corruption and misconduct has provided corruption at the very heart of our democracy now? And can the Prime Minister tell us when he first knew of the evidence and the advice and why he ignored it?
Please, let's get other people in. Prime Minister.
I first knew last Tuesday as I've set out to the House.
John Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, for the third time of asking, at the time when the Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson as ambassador, was he aware that he had been a director of Systema?
Mr Speaker, I was aware of what was in the due diligence, and I've dealt with that. I wasn't aware of what were the issues that were dealt with in the security vetting, nor the recommendation of UKSV.
Well, Pinto Jatinsky. Colvin Bailey, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mandelson's appointment was a huge failure of the British state, and I welcome the Prime Minister's candour in accepting his responsibility for his part in it. But does the Prime Minister agree that restoring public trust is a mammoth task and requires leaders on all sides to be careful with their language and to ensure that they understand the processes that they're talking about, rather than throw about baseless accusations of, quote, lying?
I do agree with that, Mr Speaker.
John Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister has been absolutely clear that he should have been shown the recommendation of UK security vetting. He knew he hadn't seen it, so why didn't he ask for it?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the first I knew that there had been a recommendation to deny clearance was Tuesday evening of last week. The security clearance had been given by the Foreign Office before Peter Mandelson took up the post. As soon as it came to my attention, I sought the information I put before the House today.
I'm going to take Kevin Bennett on the bit, and then I'm going to take Steve Darling. Kevin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Members of the public watching this matter will have been baffled by all the speculation about who said what and when. So I thank the Prime Minister for his calm, clear answer today. But no Prime Minister wants or should be in a situation like this, where governmental processes mean that critical information are not brought to the attention of ministers. So I welcome the Fulford review, but will the Prime Minister look at the wider relationship between government ministers and civil servants so that trust can be restored?
Prime Minister.
Yes, I will look at that, but I do just want to assert again, thousands of civil servants act with professionalism and integrity every day. On this occasion, this information should have been brought to my attention. Had it been, the appointment would not have been proceeded with.
Natalie. Oh, sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. During this session of Parliament, we have seen the head of the OBR carry the can and resign due to an error by a member of his team. What will it take for this Prime Minister to carry the can?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I was not provided with information I should have been provided with. Had I been provided, I wouldn't have made the decision. It was a deliberate decision. It wasn't negligence. It was a deliberate decision not to tell me.
Natalie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for his statement, and I thank him even more for the apologies on the appointment of Peter Mandelson and being here today. I want to commit the words once again to the record of Virginia Giuffre. I think they are particularly relevant to Peter Mandelson. She said, "Don't be fooled by those in Epstein's circle who say they didn't know what Epstein was doing. Anyone who spent a significant amount of time with him saw him touching girls that you wouldn't want a creepy old man touching your daughter. They can say they did not know he was raping children, but they were not blind." Now, on the House, across the House, there is consensus that we need to get to the bottom of this. I absolutely accept that the Prime Minister did not know about the security vetting. But can the Prime Minister please update the House on when we can have the next tranche of documents from the humble address
so that we can get to the bottom of who did know what and when.
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for her campaigning on behalf of these victims and many other victims in relation to abuse, sexual abuse in particular, and her insistence always that we must put the victims first. We are complying with the humble address as quickly as possible, and we will comply with it fully.
For Blandra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the Foreign Affairs Committee meeting back in November last year, I asked Sir Oliver Robbins whether the Foreign Office had a different view about who should be recommended for the posting of ambassador. Sir Oliver Robbins said to me that the Prime Minister took advice and formed a view himself, and we then acted on that view. Isn't it the case that the Prime Minister was repeatedly warned before the appointment that Peter Mandelson carried reputational and political risk, including that due diligence was not exhaustive and that vetting was not yet complete? And yet he chose to proceed regardless, announcing the appointment, overriding civil service advice and putting our national security at risk.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I simply don't accept that there's any good reason why I couldn't have been provided with the information that was withheld from me. Had it been provided to me, I wouldn't have proceeded with the appointment.
Alison Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for such a clear and comprehensive statement? I'm sure the whole House is grateful to him for doing so. Listening to the party opposite, the old adage about throwing stones in glass houses comes to mind. I don't think there are enough glass houses in Scotland to replace the ones that they are breaking today. However, Mr. Speaker, having set the record straight, does the Prime Minister agree with me that it is now the time to return to the important business of government in preserving the country's peace and security?
Prime Minister.
Yes, I do agree that the absolute focus needs to be on the fact that we're facing a war on two fronts and a cost of living crisis which this government is gripping.
Samuel Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has told us that the Cabinet Secretary gave him bad advice, Peter Mandelson lied to him, and the Foreign Office didn't tell him anything. He's really in danger of being known as the mushroom Prime Minister, kept in the dark and fed. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, Mr. Speaker, so I'm not saying it. But is a question not that he wished to remain in the dark? He knew in September there was a security vetting, and yet he never asked about it until April of this year. Surely that's an indication that he was quite happy to be kept in the dark because he'd made his mind up anyway.
Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. What I did was ask for the process to be reviewed, and Sir Chris Warmold carried out that review. What transpired last week is that information was withheld from him in the review. So I asked for the review. I did ask the questions. He gave me his conclusions. What neither he knew nor I knew was that he too was not told the relevant material in the course of that review.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister's statement, and I've sat here and I've listened today to one Conservative member after another preaching at us about standards of honesty and integrity. Can the Prime Minister remind us whether these are the same Conservatives who voted to change the rules on standards investigations in November 2021 just to get their colleague Owen Paterson off the hook? And can he remind us whether or not the Leader of the Opposition chose to abstain in that debate?
It's not relevant, don't worry. Brendan O'Hara.
Most reasonable people have concluded that if the Prime Minister knew and he inadvertently misled Parliament, then he should resign. If he didn't know, then he's running an incompetent, shambolic government and really should resign. And if he was lied to yet again, then he's simply too gullible and lacking in basic curiosity to serve as Prime Minister. Is the Prime Minister so detached from reality that he's the only person who cannot see that?
Mr. Speaker, the information was withheld from me. It was withheld from the Cabinet Secretary, who was conducting a review on my behalf. That became clear yesterday, and I've set out the facts to Parliament.
Sir Desmond Swayne.
On the 4th of February, at column 780, my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, asked the Prime Minister, did the official security vetting that he received mention that Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Prime Minister, yes, it did. What on earth was it that he received that he was talking about, which the Right Honourable Lady referred to as the official security vetting, and he said yes, he had received it?
Yes, exactly. The due diligence report.
Calm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a degree of sympathy for the Prime Minister, I truly do, because he set out very succinctly how he followed the processes and procedures. But as a member of the bar, we are taught at a very embryonic stage in our profession that if you take on a client and there's something suspicious, then you contact the ethics line. As a member of the bar and King's Counsel, that would have been a trait that he was all too familiar with. So can the Prime Minister answer the basic question for the British public? Why didn't he take that basic step?
Peter Mandelson was granted developed vetting clearance by the Foreign Office before he took up post. It was only last Tuesday that I found out that that was against the recommendation of UK SV.
Joe Morrissey.
The Times reported last week that you repeatedly sought assurances from the FCDO that Peter Mandelson had passed security vetting. Is this correct? And when did you seek these assurances?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he got DV clearance before he took up his post as ambassador. That clearance was given by the Foreign Office. I found out that was against the recommendation on Tuesday evening of last week.
Helen Maguire.
Speaker, I have two brief questions. Was the decision not to give Mandelson DV the view of the head of security in FCDO or only that of Ollie Robbins? And secondly, what information did the Prime Minister know after sacking Peter Mandelson that made him change the appointment process so that, I quote, now an appointment cannot be announced until after security vetting is passed? It seems odd to me that this decision was made if the Prime Minister didn't know that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting process. So what key information did the Prime Minister know then that made him review the appointment process?
Well, the decision to grant clearance was made by the FCDO. After, in September, it became clear to me the answers to the due diligence that Peter Mandelson had given were not truthful, and that's why I set in place the various reviews that I did, and also changed the approach in relation to when developed vetting checks are carried out.
Dave Mandel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister really saying that in the appointment of Peter Mandelson, he didn't himself consider that there might be issues with his vetting process, given his track record? And isn't it even more incredible that he then didn't query whether there had been any issues with that vetting process?
Prime Minister. The fact of the matter is he was given developed vetting clearance before he took up his post as the ambassador, and that was a decision that was taken by FCDO.
Zara Sultan.
Speaker, in September the Prime Minister stood at this dispatch box and told the House he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson, a man whose relationship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was public knowledge. The Prime Minister knew and backed him anyway. Now he claims he had no idea that this twice-fired government minister had failed MI6 vetting, despite journalists putting that directly to Downing Street that very same month. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Prime Minister appointed Mandelson because he owes his job to him. He appointed him, he defended him, and now he claims to know nothing. He is gaslighting the nation. So let's call this out for what it is. The Prime Minister is a barefaced liar, and if he had any decency left...
No, order. Sit and leave. Leave now. I'll name you otherwise. I'd go now if I were you. Leave. I'm not. Leave. I've no name. I've given the option to leave. I'd leave if I were you very quickly. Move before I read it and give me one option. Right, give me that. You have no duties. It's my duty to carry out and control this House. One chance. Do you want to leave now or not? Right. I name Zara Sultana. Minister, I beg to move that the said member, be suspended from the House.
Mr. Speaker, call Jane Kitchen.
Jane Kitchen.
I beg to move that Zara Sultana be suspended from the service of the House.
The question is that Zara Sultana be named and leave this House. All those in favour? Aye. Leave. I'm sorry you've done this. I really am. Right. Come on, Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 7 months ago,
7 months ago, a national newspaper ran the story that Mandelson had failed security vetting. So how is it even possible that no one in number 10 knew until last week?
Prime Minister. A number of inquiries were made. Questions were asked of FCDO, and the answer they gave was the same. They did not disclose to me or anyone in number 10 that UK SV had recommended against clearance.
Dr. Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Prime Minister asked his officials in January 2025, as he surely did, perhaps with an element of surprise in his voice, so Peter actually passed his security clearance, did he? What was the scenario that then unfolded? Did Sir Ollie Robbins declare, "I'm sorry, I can't tell you, Prime Minister, I'm not at liberty to say"? Did he actively seek to mislead the Prime Minister by simply saying, "Yes, Prime Minister"? Or, as seems more likely, did that scenario never take place because the Prime Minister never thought to ask?
Mr. Speaker, what happened in January was that developed vetting clearance was given by the Foreign Office. That was the simple fact of the matter. It was only last week I found out the further circumstance I've now set out to the House.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the box note to the Prime Minister dated the 11th of November 2024, the former Cabinet Secretary, Simon Case, advised the Prime Minister that before appointing a political appointee, he should get security clearance before announcing. The Prime Minister ignored that advice. The Prime Minister's response in that box note is redacted. So I asked him a very simple question. What was his answer on that box note, and will he publish what he said?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I made it clear that my position was that the appointment was subject to developed vetting. I can't, in all conscience, remember what exactly was being redacted. Honestly, well, he's asking me what a redacted. I had the process I'd understood to be subject to developed vetting. That's why I asked Chris Warmold to look at the process and reference back to Simon Case.
I'm running this 10 more minutes, that's it. Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Office raised severe concerns regarding Peter Mandelson's links with Epstein, Russia and China in the due diligence report he received before the appointment was announced. The Prime Minister, however, brushed these concerns aside and announced Mandelson as ambassador nonetheless. Given what the due diligence exercise had already flagged, it was surely predictable Mandelson would fail security vetting for those reasons. But number 10 had already told the Foreign Office, before Sir Ollie Robbins took up his post, to proceed with the appointment. Notwithstanding these issues, that's exactly what he did, by putting in place necessary safeguards. So can the Prime Minister please explain why he's sacked a loyal and brilliant public servant?
Prime Minister.
Because he didn't bring to my attention information he should have brought to my attention. Had he done so, I wouldn't have made the appointment.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister dissembles over what he knew about Starmer and Mandelson, but the Cabinet Office due diligence report sent to the Prime Minister on on the 11th of December 2024 said Mandelson served as a non-executive director of the Russian conglomerate Starmer, which is itself a majority shareholder of RTI, a defence technology company. Mandelson remained on the board until June 2017, long after Putin's annexation of Crimea in 2014. So will the Prime Minister finally confirm that he knew that Mandelson was a director of Starmer long after the invasion of Crimea, but appointed him anyway?
Very good.
As I've made clear, I did know what was in the due diligence report. I've made that clear to the House a number of times today. I've actually made it clear to the House on previous occasions.
Dr. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My concern is, Mr. Speaker, that this Prime Minister is going to run out of buses before he runs out of people to throw under them. And the issue is this, because the Prime Minister has said that he will never turn on his staff and that you should never turn on your staff. Well, Sue Gray scapegoated, Tim Allen canned, Sir Chris Wormald forced out, Morgan McSweeney axed, and now Ollie Robbins is sacked. Will the Prime Minister accept that the buck stops with him, this is his fault, and do the honourable thing?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information was withheld from me by FCDO in the circumstance I've set out to the House.
Louis French.
Mr. Speaker, my question to the Prime Minister is a straightforward one. Did Morgan McSweeney or any of your advisers, past and present, know about this issue before last Thursday?
No.
Claire Young.
Mr. Speaker, to override the outcome of the developed vetting process, the FCDO must have been under pressure from someone. Ditching a tried and tested ambassador for a high-risk one seems odd behaviour for a Prime Minister who claims to be so fond of proper process. So whose idea was it, and who was applying the pressure?
Mr. Speaker, can I just reject the idea that any pressure is a good reason not to disclose to the Prime Minister that UKSV recommended against clearance for a very senior, sensitive appointment. I simply don't accept that that's an adequate reason, whatever the pressure.
Dr. Keir, Madam.
The Prime Minister is suggesting that the idea the security services had concerns about this appointment was a bolt out of the blue to him 2 weeks ago, despite the fact it was on the front page of a national newspaper in September. But my question is not about the vetting file, because we all know the answer the Prime Minister is going to give. Separate to the vetting file, at any stage was he made aware of element of security services raising concerns about the appointment of Mandelson?
Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. What I knew was that security clearance had been given by the Foreign Office in the way I've set out to the House.
Saoirse Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Lagan Valley and across Northern Ireland and across the UK will be disgusted that we have spent this amount of time discussing this issue when it should have been put to the fore the first time it came in the press. Does the Prime Minister understand that every time we do this and we go through this, we destroy the reputation of this place, no matter who the government of the day is? Your party don't even stand for election in my neck of the woods, so this is not party political. This is about protecting the reputation of this place. Do you understand?
Prime Minister.
That's why I wanted to give the House all the relevant information, which I've given at some length this afternoon.
Good job.
Thank you. So we have now established that the Prime Minister did indeed know that Peter Mandelson had been a director of Systema when he appointed him. Why on earth would the Prime Minister be so reckless with our national security to do that?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've made it clear that I knew what was in the due diligence. I've also made it clear that FCDO granted security clearance before Peter Mandelson took up his post.
John Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a simple question that we still don't have an answer to. Did Peter Mandelson fail his vetting procedure because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, or was it some other reason as yet undisclosed?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information that was fed into the review and the reasons for the review is protected, because otherwise the integrity, this is not a Peter Mandelson issue, it's the integrity of the process. What I don't accept is that that means I can't be told the recommendation that comes out of it.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Prime Minister knew the difference between the due diligence information from the Cabinet Office and the security vetting that hadn't taken place when he appointed Peter Mandelson on the 18th of December.
Prime Minister.
I did know the difference.
Pamela Pettigall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After years of sleaze and scandal under the previous government, the Prime Minister promised integrity and accountability. But my constituents in Stratford-on-Avon are not seeing change. They are seeing more of the same, a continuity government where warnings are ignored and standards slip. Why should anyone believe that he is still capable of delivering the change that he promised?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I made sure the relevant inquiries were made so I could put the full picture before the House. That is the approach that I've taken, as members have seen this afternoon.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a humiliating day for the Prime Minister and for the House and for the whole country. And yet, even still, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister isn't being open with us. He's relying on some later inquiry when the Cabinet Secretary told him in writing, in the official briefing, that he must seek a vetting prior to the appointment of a political appointee. That's true, isn't it, Prime Minister? And can you give a straight answer, just for once?
As I say, the process was that the appointment was subject to developed vetting checks being carried out. Had I been made aware of the recommendation of UKSV, I wouldn't have made the appointment. What I did after the event was ask Sir Chris Wilmot to look back at the process, which he did according to and by reference to the Simon Case letter, and he assured me the process had been carried out properly.
Kruger.
Mr. Speaker, if Ollie Robbins could and should have provided this information to the Prime Minister at the first opportunity, as he's said today, surely the same applies to Cat Little and Antonio Romeo and the Cabinet Office officials who sat on this information for nearly a month before bringing it to the Prime Minister when The Guardian started asking questions of number 10. So surely, why does he accept that they needed legal advice to do what he is saying should have been obvious? He sacked Ollie Robbins for not bringing him that information immediately. Why are they still in post?
Mr. Speaker, they acted entirely appropriately. They came across the information as part of the humble address exercise. They took legal advice on who it could be disclosed to and disclosed it to me as soon as they got that legal advice. That was the right thing to do.
And about subjective.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 4th of February, Peter Mandelson was notified by the Appointments and Interchange Officer from the FCDO that he required strap-level access in addition to his DV. He started the role on the 10th of February. On what date did Peter Mandelson receive strap-level access?
Prime Minister.
I don't know the precise date, but I'll endeavour to find out.
Slow.
Mr. Speaker, given it's widely known Peter Mandelson was maintained a friendship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, close links in both China and Russia in terms of business, sat from 2 government posts, what I really want to ask the Prime Minister is this. What are the unique, defining human qualities of the man I've just described that so attracted to you that he should be politically appointed as US Ambassador? And why now is he still defending him behind process instead of calling out what's wrong and taking the responsibility and resigning?
I'm not defending him behind process. I'm setting out the process to the House.
Dr. Neil Shastri-Hurst.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Quis custodiant ipsos custodes. The Prime Minister will know that who will guard the guards themselves. With that in mind and holding those in power to account, can he explain why he took more than a week, or almost a week, to come to this House when the public will have been expecting answers much, much sooner?
Prime Minister.
Because I wanted to know who took the decision, the basis upon which they took it, and who knew about the decision, so I could set out a full account to the House, which is what I've done this afternoon.
Alistair.
Does it come to this, Mr. Speaker, that this House and the country is being asked to believe that though he is the Prime Minister, making the most critical diplomatic appointment that the United Kingdom can make, that he, the Prime Minister, in the midst of the raging controversy that provoked, never asked if his nominee had been security vetted? Isn't it that is staggering and incredible? And when it comes to our National Security Advisor, what was his role? What does he know? Could the House be told that?
Mr. Speaker, the attention on the process began very much in September 25 when the Bloomberg emails were published. That is when I agreed with the Cabinet Secretary to carry out a review of the entire process, and I've set that out at some length this afternoon.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has chosen to blame his officials for this debacle. So can he confirm that he knows the names of the FCDO civil servants that made the decision to override UK SV on the 29th of January 2025, yes or no? And has he made the decision to suspend them all from duty pending a full independent inquiry? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I've set out the facts to the House this afternoon. I have ordered a review by Schrader and Fulford of security vetting so that if any further changes are needed, we can put them in place.
Sir Wrigley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that Peter Mandelson's vetting clearance was conditional on him being accompanied to meetings with former clients such as Palantir. Will the Prime Minister clarify why there is no record of his and Peter Mandelson's meeting with Palantir in Washington, and will he tell the House what it was all about?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that was a routine meeting in the course of a visit I was on in the US.
The Prime Minister is repeatedly telling us that he either was not told or he was not allowed to be told. But what culture has the Prime Minister created around him and across the civil service that no one felt that they could or should tell him this sensitive information?
Prime Minister.
I remind her that in the last 2 weeks, my senior officials have brought this to my attention, which is what they have. Before The Guardian, they brought it to my attention on Tuesday evening. That is what led me to ask further questions and make this statement to the House.
Joshua Reynolds.
The Prime Minister once promised to end the chaos and to restore honesty and integrity to government. Does he think that appointing a man who called a convicted child sex offender his best pal and whose connections with Epstein were already well known is consistent with that promise? And if it isn't, will he step aside and let someone else end his chaos and restore honesty and integrity to government?
Mr. Speaker, I've accepted that I made an error in the appointment and apologised to the victims, as I must and as I did.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 4th of February, my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, asked the Prime Minister whether the vetting process had disclosed information about Epstein. The Prime Minister answered, yes, it did. In his response to my honourable friend, the member for New Forest West, he said, oh, I've got confused between vetting and disclosure. But then in the answer to my friend, the Honourable Member for South West Devon, he said he knew the difference. So if that's not misleading the House, what is?
I was asked about the vetting process. The due diligence is part of the vetting process. Rather than, as it were, rest on a technicality, I gave the House the information that I had about what I knew from the due diligence. It was clear what the Leader of the Opposition was asking. It was about Epstein. I knew that was in the due process, due diligence, and that's why I told the House about it.
Madam Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised that, unlike the Tories, his government would govern well and restore public trust. Yet this whole sorry Mandelson saga has reinforced the belief in Yeovil and beyond that no government or politician can change. Can the Prime Minister explain to my constituents why he annoyed the then Cabinet Secretary's advice to get the security clearance before he confirmed Mandelson as ambassador?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've dealt with that issue on a number of occasions.
Right, that completes the number of questions. We'll let the front benches change over.
Before I call the Minister to make the statement on recent anti-Semitic attacks, I should inform the House that in some cases charges have been brought, and those cases, including the attack on the Hatzola Community Ambulance Service and at the Manchester Synagogue, are therefore sub judice. In respect of more recent incidents in Kenton and in Finchley, arrests have been made but charges not yet brought. I remind honourable members that they should not refer to the details of any specific cases currently before the courts, and they should exercise caution with respect to any specific cases that might subsequently come before the courts, in order not to prejudice those proceedings. We now begin the statement. Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with permission, I will make a statement about the appalling incidents over recent days targeting British Jews and opponents of the Iranian regime. I will begin with the facts. Counter-terrorism policing have confirmed that they are investigating a series of arson attacks and incidents that have occurred in London over recent days. These include an arson attack at a synagogue in Finchley on Wednesday the 15th of April, a suspected arson attack targeting a premises in Hendon linked to a Jewish charity on Friday the 17th of April, a suspected arson attack targeting a synagogue in Harrow on the evening of Saturday the 18th of April, and a further incident in the early hours of yesterday morning outside a residential premises in Finchley and opposite a synagogue. These events follow the arson attack on a volunteer-led ambulance service run by the Jewish community in Golders Green on the 23rd of March. And last week, there was also an attempted arson attack on a Persian-language media organisation that has previously been the target of serious threats linked to the Iranian regime and their proxies. 8 arrests have now been made in connection with that incident, and 4 people have been charged. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, Jewish communities across the UK will be distressed and dismayed by these abhorrent attacks. And I know that I speak for honourable members right across this House when I say that there is no place in British life for anti-Semitism. Attacks on British Jews are an attack on all of us, and we will do whatever it takes to stop the cowards and the thugs who seek to intimidate our Jewish communities. Now, the police response over the weekend has been decisive. 15 arrests have already been made. In addition, a range of capabilities have been deployed to deter potential attackers and to reassure communities. Over the weekend, the Metropolitan Police significantly increased the number of officers in and around North West London. Uniformed and plain-clothed officers have maintained a strong presence around Barnet, and additional stop and search powers have been introduced across the borough. Response vehicles and counter-terrorism policing resources have been deployed alongside local policing to respond to potential threats. Now, to ensure the police response is a sustainable one, the Government has already committed an additional £5 million for this financial year to support the deployment of specialist officers across the country to support vulnerable communities under Project Servitor. That is in addition to the record £73.4 million annual funding for protective security at Jewish, Muslim and other faith sites. This morning, I visited Finchley Reformed Synagogue with the Deputy Commissioner and the local MP, member of this House. I met community leaders and saw firsthand the strengthened police presence and the resilience of those affected. I reaffirmed our commitment to protect all those who've been targeted. Now, the Government's commitment to supporting British Jews is an enduring one. We are taking firm steps to root out anti-Semitism wherever it appears across public life, from our public services to our universities to our charities and beyond. We are backing up our words with action. This includes launching an urgent review of anti-Semitism within the NHS, introducing mandatory training and investing £7 million to tackle anti-Semitism in schools, colleges and universities. This is a whole of society effort grounded in close engagement with Jewish communities. We are determined to tackle the issues that have a daily impact on the lives of our Jewish communities. Now, an amendment to existing powers will allow the police to deal with repeat protests by taking into account the cumulative effect of protest activity, and the Home Secretary has asked Lord MacDonald to undertake a review of public order laws to ensure people can go about their lives without the fear of intimidation. The Government has also set out its vision for a fair, tolerant and decent country with the recent publication of Protecting What Matters, our action plan to tackle threats to social cohesion and to counter the scourge of extremism. The plan makes significant spending commitments, including £800 million to expand the Pride in Place programme to 40 new neighbourhoods, plus new investment in community resilience, schools linking and local media. This vital effort requires us to work collectively across government and with operational partners, and will be driven forward by my right honourable friend, the Communities Secretary. Furthermore, we are actively protecting Persian language media organisations at risk. This includes tailored security advice and cyber protection through to armed police protection where necessary. We have already seen a number of charges and convictions of those seeking to harm journalists in the UK. And through implementation of the National Security Act and through other means, we are making the United Kingdom an even harder operating target for hostile actors. Madam Deputy Speaker, honourable members will be aware that a group calling itself Ashab al-Yamin, the Islamic movement of the Companions of the Right, has claimed responsibility for a number of these incidents. It has also claimed responsibility for attacks across Europe over recent months targeting Jewish and Israeli interests. I am aware of the public speculation linking that group to the Iranian state. Now, given that police investigations are ongoing, it would not be appropriate to comment on who may ultimately be beyond these specific incidents. More generally, we have and will continue to hold Iran to account for its hostile acts. But let me be absolutely clear. Whether linked to Iran or to any other source, we will never tolerate hostile activity on British soil. And alongside the police and our world-leading security and intelligence agencies, we will do what is necessary to keep our citizens safe. And for those criminal proxies who are used by states to do their dirty work, we will continue to ensure that their actions are met with the full weight of the law, as we saw with the conviction of the Chechen-born Austrian national in 2023, who was imprisoned for conducting surveillance on Iran International's UK headquarters. And we've already seen the first convictions under the National Security Act for assisting a foreign intelligence service, including that of Dylan Earle, who in October received a sentence of 17 years for masterminding an arson campaign for Russia's Wagner Group. So for anyone tempted by offers of financial reward from foreign states to conduct hostile acts against the UK, my advice and my message is unambiguous. You will be discovered, and the consequences will be severe. Turning a blind eye or pleading ignorance is no defence. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, anti-Semitism has existed in its many poisonous forms for centuries, but there is no doubt that we find ourselves at a critical juncture as fellow members of our society feel forced, in some cases, to live a smaller Jewish life. Our response must be unflinching, and I assure the House that under this government it always will be. We will work relentlessly to ensure that anti-Semites and those who threaten the Jewish community here have nowhere to hide, and to show British Jews that we stand with them and that we will do everything in our power to keep them safe. I commend this statement to the House.
I call Shadow Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. The attacks on our Jewish community have become a national emergency. In recent weeks, we've seen multiple attacks against cultural sites and synagogues. The Jewish community has been targeted again and again. As a result, many Jewish people are now tragically considering leaving the UK. When the Shadow Home Secretary visited the community in Golders Green just after the attack on the Atzola ambulances, he was told they feel abandoned by the government. He spoke to a young mother that morning who said she was afraid to send her children to school. Matt Dukes, the Met Police Deputy Commissioner, said this morning that we've seen hate crimes in our communities before, but now what we've got is the prospect of a foreign state actually using that as a mechanism to sow discord and create anxiety in our communities. Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah, an Islamist militant group with links to Iran, indeed many would say a proxy for Iran, has now claimed responsibility for 5 incidents targeting Jewish sites in London, including the firebombing of the Atzola ambulances in Golders Green and the attempted drone attack on the Israeli embassy. Vicky Evans, the Senior National Coordinator for Counter-Terrorism, told reporters on Sunday, as the conflict in the Middle East continues to evolve, counter-terrorism police and our partners remain alive to the threat of Iranian hostile activity in the UK. How much more Iranian action on our UK soil is needed before the government acts to prescribe the IRGC? In opposition, the Labour Party, including the then Shadow Home Secretary, now the Foreign Secretary, said they would do this, but almost 2 years after winning power, they've done nothing. Many other countries have acted by prescribing the IRGC, including the USA, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and earlier this year, even the European Union. So why hasn't this government delivered on its election promise to prescribe the IRGC? If emergency legislation is needed, the Minister will have our support to get it rapidly through Parliament. Will he accept our offer now from the dispatch box? If Iran is behind these recent attacks, then large numbers of Iranian diplomats and those suspected of being Iranian spies in the UK must also be immediately expelled, as happened to Russian diplomats and spies after the Salisbury attack. This would send a powerful message and degrade Iran's ability to act on UK soil. But besides foreign-directed attacks, there's been a sickening tidal wave of domestic anti-Semitism as well. As the Leader of the Opposition said, as a black woman in this country, she has never seen the level of racism, discrimination, intimidation and attacks that have been directed at Jewish communities. She said that if people were firebombing black churches the way synagogues have been attacked, people being killed, ambulances being firebombed, there would be a national emergency. This should be considered a national emergency. Anti-Semitism, of course, often goes hand in hand with Islamist extremism, a threat we know all too well. Some 75% of MI5's terrorism caseload relates to Islamist extremism. and 94% of terrorist murders in the last 25 years have been perpetrated by Islamist extremists. Yet only 10% of the Prevent caseload is Islamist. When we discussed the Hezbollah attacks a few weeks ago, the Security Minister said the government are looking at what they can do about what he rightly admitted was the mismatch in Prevent caseloads. Can the Minister update the House on the progress he's made since saying that? Madam Deputy Speaker, will the government commit to using counter-terrorist surveillance techniques to disrupt anti-Semitic attacks before they occur? Will the government also commit to deporting any foreign national who expresses extremist views, sympathy for violence or terrorism, anti-Semitism or any other such religious hatred? In October, the Home Secretary said that she was reviewing the use of this power under Section 3 of the Immigration Act 1971 and promised to update the House. But we've heard nothing since. Will the Minister please update the House today? Madam Deputy Speaker, anti-Semitism is a stain on our society. Warm words are no longer enough. Real action is needed.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to him for his response. I hope that he will accept that the response from this government is not about warm words. It is about decisive, targeted, effective activity, and that's what we've seen over the past few days. But let me agree with him in terms of recognising the fear and distress that exists within our Jewish communities. It is abhorrent that members of our Jewish community are considering that their long-term future in the United Kingdom. And collectively, I'm sure that we want to assure them that we will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that the United Kingdom is a safe place for them and their families. But I do recognise the fear and the distress that they are feeling at the moment. And that is why we're making sure that our response is proportionate and urgent in the way that I set out earlier in my remarks. Now, the Shadow Minister entirely reasonably raised the spectre of the threat that we face from Iran. So let me say to him and to the House, and I've made these points previously, but for the purpose of clarification, let me tell him precisely what we're doing to combat the specific threat from Iran. So this government specified Iran under the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, which is a useful operational tool which will bolster our oversight of Iran's influence activities here in the UK. We've sanctioned more than 550 Iranian individuals and entities, including the IRGC in its entirety. And he mentioned prescription. He will know that the government have committed to take forward the recommendations by Jonathan Hall KC, including the creation of a new prescription-like power to help tackle malign activity by state and non-state linked actors. We've also engaged in extensive activity to go after the criminal networks and enablers that the Iranian intelligence services use to carry out their work, as well as targeting those who assist the IRGC and others to launder their money here in the United Kingdom. The role of the police force right around the country is incredibly important in terms of this work, and that is why we've rolled out new training to all frontline police officers to increase their understanding of state threats. And we are strengthening our immigration system against Iranian infiltration, including those who promote Iranian interference in the UK. We're also doing this in concert with our allies, and we are engaging internationally on transnational Iranian threats, including joining with 13 other countries in condemning Iranian intelligence activities, both in the United Kingdom and globally. Now, he mentioned the work that we're doing in Prevent, and I know that he will have seen the Home Secretary confirm the appointment of a new independent Prevent Commissioner, Tim Jakes, to fulfil the role that has been done expertly by Lord Anderson. This is an important role, and we want to work very closely with him to ensure that the Prevent programme is fit for purpose. He will have seen the detail from phase 1 of the Southport inquiry, and will also have seen that the government immediately commissioned phase 2, which will be conducted by Sir Adrian Fulford, and the government has made a commitment to respond in full by the summer. He also made, I think, an entirely reasonable and important point about extremism. The government is doing a lot of work led by, as I said in my earlier remarks, the Secretary of State for MHCLG, but there is a lot of work coordinated across government to target the threats that we face from extremists. This work was set out just recently with the publication of the Protecting What Matters document, and that shows how the government is delivering a fundamental reset of how we counter extremism, ensuring that we have the tools, capabilities and partnership to match the scale and the nature of the threat that we face. I hope he and the House understands the seriousness with which we take this. These should not be matters of cross-party disagreement. We should work together to make sure that our Jewish communities feel safe, and that will be our approach.
Thank you,
Madam Deputy Speaker. On Saturday, my constituents in Hendon awoke to the news of a despicable anti-Semitic attack at the heart of our community at the former HQ of Jewish Futures on Hendon Way. As the Minister said, this is not an isolated incident. We've seen the abhorrent attack on Hatzola, just a mile down the road in Golders Green, and on Finchley Reform and Kennington United Synagogues, both nearby. And many of my constituents face discrimination and abuse every single day for no other reason than that they are Jewish. I am working intensively with the police, and I'm grateful for all they are doing. But as the Prime Minister has said, we must not just ensure our Jewish community is safe. We must ensure that Jewish people in Hendon and across the whole country are able to live full and proud Jewish lives free from fear. Yeah. Can the Minister share more about what additional measures are being taken both to protect the community in the wake of these despicable attacks and to ensure that the Jewish members of my community are not forced to live smaller Jewish lives?
Yeah. Well, I'm very grateful to him for the assiduous representation of his constituents and his constituency. And the threats that he describes are abhorrent and completely unacceptable. And the notion that some members of our Jewish communities might be forced to live less Jewish lives is totally unacceptable. And it is the government's responsibility to make sure that our response is proportionate to that threat. Along with ministerial colleagues in the department, we've been in constant contact with the Metropolitan Police over the last few days, and I met with the Deputy Commissioner, Matt Jukes, this morning to look at what more we can do to make sure that the police have got the resources that they need. I think I do want to take the opportunity to thank the police for the work that they have done in recent times. It has been an impressive effort. They have stepped up to the plate, and their response has been impressive. But what we need to ensure is that we've collectively got the resources in place to continue that for as long as required, to provide the reassurance that constituencies like the one he's proud to represent require. But I give him an assurance of the seriousness with which we take this, and I'd be very happy to discuss this with him further.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the Liberal Democrats, I want to extend my sympathies to the Jewish community, who will be understandably worried about the disturbing uptick in violence against their community across Britain. The series of arson attacks on Jewish sites in recent days is an abhorrent trend. The pattern of attacks on Britain's Jews is clear to see, and without serious intervention it is only a matter of time before another attack like that seen in Manchester last year occurs again, and we are grateful to hear the Minister's words today about the action that's being taken. We must recognise that we have a huge anti-Semitism problem in this country. We must in this House restate it again and again until that problem has been stamped out. But that is not enough. The political system must take action to tackle its root causes. Earlier today I met with groups that represent British Jews, including the Community Security Trust. They told me that British Jews are feeling extremely vulnerable, with some questioning their long-term security in this country. That such sentiment is held by any minority group in Britain in 2026 must give this House pause for thought. That this sentiment is held by the Jewish community, given the centuries of persecution they have suffered, is a tragedy. A group called Ashab al-Yamin has claimed responsibility for a number of attacks, and others across Europe. What are ministers doing with our European partners to tackle the cross-country threat and the cross-continent threat that this organisation and others pose? Given the potential links with the IRGC, will the Minister act swiftly to prescribe the IRGC, and does he accept that if these links are substantiated, prescription would be more likely to deliver justice for the Jewish community? Now, we know that hostile foreign states sometimes try to recruit individuals online to carry out these kinds of attacks on British people, and there are rumours that social media has been the recruitment tool that's been used. So does the Minister know what the social media companies are doing to identify, to monitor and clamp down on this practice, and what are ministers doing to ensure social media companies are taking action themselves?
Well, I'm grateful to him for a series of entirely sensible and constructive points that he's made, and he's absolutely right about the abhorrent nature of the threat. And he's also right to raise the spectre of what happened in Manchester. Those of us who have the privilege of serving in government to keep our national security as safe and keep our public safe has spent a lot of time looking very closely at what happened in Manchester. And I give him and the House an absolute assurance that we work around the clock to try and ensure that these terrible attacks can't happen. And we make sure that our intelligence services and our police have got the resources that they need in order to do the important job that we ask them to do. I'm grateful to him for mentioning the Community Security Trust. I suspect every member of this House knows about the work of the Community Security Trust. I think that they are held in the very highest of regard. They do incredibly important work. I'm proud of the resource that this government has put into that work. But he's also right to make the point that we need to tackle this threat via the root causes. Walls and cameras and defences are an important part of our response, but it's not the only part of our response, and that is why I made the remarks that I did just a moment ago with regard to tackling extremism. Now, he asked specifically about international engagement, and he's right to do so. I can give him an assurance that we work very closely with our international partners, particularly in Europe, but also in the Middle East and further afield as well. And there is a lot of activity along with our partners to identify the particular nature of the threat that we're facing collectively. And I give him an assurance that whatever tools, whatever legislative arrangement is required, we will bring it forward.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will be very aware that I have a thriving Jewish community in my constituency, a community that I grew up in and I feel very protective about. I wanted to share with the Minister today an email from my constituent Richard, who said that many in the community are fearful, some are not attending synagogues and some are not attending communal events. Sunday schools for children are taking place behind thick security cordons. And my niece, who attends a Jewish primary school, Richard says, has 2 police officers at the gate this morning. He then goes on to say that instead of action, we are receiving platitudes from those in power. He asks me, why hasn't your government prescribed the IRGC, who are directly involved in terror against Britain's Jewish community and against British interests? Could I ask the Minister, who recently visited my constituency and had a conversation with the leading community leaders, what shall I reply to Richard, my constituent, and why hasn't the government prescribed IRGC?
I'm grateful to her. She has raised her concerns in a very diligent way on a number of occasions with me. And I should say that I had the privilege of visiting JW3 in her constituency just recently. It is a truly inspiring place. And I do want to take the opportunity to pay tribute to Raymond, the CEO, and all the staff and the volunteers for the incredibly important work that they do. I know it is hugely appreciated in her community. The threat that she described is totally unacceptable. And I can give her an absolute assurance to go back to her constituents to say how seriously we take that threat, and to give her an absolute assurance that we will bring forward and use all of the tools at our disposal. Now, there has been a lot of commentary around prescribing the IRGC, and I completely understand why that is the case. She will understand that the government have made a commitment to bring forward a legislative tool that was recommended by Jonathan Hall. It was this government's view that we didn't have the appropriate legislative mechanism in order to prescribe a state-backed entity. And that is why the government has made a commitment to bring forward that particular tool. But she should take assurance that we will not wait for that particular legislative tool to do everything that we need to combat and counter the work of the IRG. And I set out a moment ago the work that we're doing to counter the threat from Iran, and I hope that provides some assurance to her and to her constituents.
Yeah. Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure everyone in this House has heard stories from friends and constituents who are not able to enjoy a full Jewish life in the way that they should be able to. And the Minister is right, this isn't just about putting more police and security in place, this is about driving out the root cause of anti-Semitism. But in this case, it does seem that the attacks are driven by foreign state actors, and so I must agree with the calls for the prescription of the IRGC. This is something that the government must now look at urgently.
I'm grateful to the Right Honourable Lady for the work that she does with her Select Committee, and she's right about the point relating to the root causes. And the government has to make sure that not only are we tackling the root causes, but we've got appropriate security and defence mechanisms in place. She will understand the rigour that Jonathan Hall conducts his work on behalf of the government. He is somebody with great credibility and experience in this field. It was his view that we currently don't have the appropriate legislative mechanism in order to properly prescribe a state entity. But as I've said to my honourable friend just a moment ago, that does not stop this government ensuring that we've got all of the measures in place. We have made a commitment to bring forward that legislative tool, and that is what we will do.
Damien Egan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Ministers will be aware that the charity sector is being exploited by extremists, with record amounts of money being pumped into British-based organisations with charitable status by our adversaries and hostile states. While these extremists often target Britain's Jews, the threats go far beyond and don't stop with the Jewish community. I'd like to ask, can the Minister give assurances that updated, robust powers will be granted to the Charity Commission in the next legislative session so that they can tackle these growing threats?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I think he makes a really important point. And it emphasises the fact that the levers that we have in government don't sit within a single government department, and that's why we've got to make sure that we've got a coordinated response. Let me say something specific in response to the point he's made about charities, because the government has announced plans to strengthen the Charity Commission powers to close down charities that promote extremism. And the Department for Culture, Media and Sport are working with the Charity Commission to speed up the process of investigating charities suspected of engaging in extremist behaviour, including strengthening its powers to close them down if needed. I can also say that the Department for Culture, Media and Sport will soon be consulting on plans to automatically ban individuals with a criminal conviction for hate crime from serving as charity trustees or senior managers. And it will also consult on plans to strengthen the Commission's powers to disqualify individuals where there is evidence that they have promoted violence or hatred. This is important work and we need to progress it at pace.
David Simmons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituency is home to many Jewish communities as well as a significant number of Iranian refugees. And this morning I met with David Summers, a volunteer who coordinates security at one of our synagogues, and Jeremy Havardi of B'nai B'rith, a well-known national Jewish organisation. There's a real concern, given the number of incidents in northwest London, that these are becoming closer and closer to home for my Jewish constituents. And I know they'd like me to ask the Minister what consideration he's given, in the light of the amount of pressure on our police forces, of bringing in the support of police forces outside of the Metropolitan Police area, so that all our Jewish constituents, schools, synagogues and other community locations can enjoy the level of visible security and covert security that they need to be able to live their lives to the full.
Good question. I'm grateful to him, and I think he makes an entirely reasonable point. Let me, before I come to the substance of the point he made, just reiterate the commitment to ensuring that no state, regardless of who they are able to target people in this country, whether in this case that is members of the Jewish communities or whether that is Iranian dissidents. And I can assure him that there is a huge amount of work underway to make sure that that is not the case. I think he made an entirely reasonable point about ensuring that the Metropolitan Police have the resources that they need to do a very difficult job at a point of challenge. As he would expect, I've been in very regular contact with the police over the course of this weekend. And as I mentioned earlier, I met with Deputy Commissioner Matt Jukes this morning to discuss what further support that we can provide. I think the point he's made about assistance from other forces is an interesting one. Clearly, that will be for the Met to determine. But I can say to him, we will work very closely to make sure that the police have got the resources that they require.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tonight, Panorama will air a documentary featuring members of the Jewish community talking about the existential fear that they face in this country and wanting to leave. And I urge all members to watch that when they can. Now, we know that an IRGC-linked group has claimed responsibility for some of the firebombing attacks recently. And I appreciate the Minister's comments about not wanting to comment on active police investigations. So whatever the facts of those cases are, we all agree, and I'm sure he does too, that the Iranian regime poses a threat to the British Jewish community. So can he set out exactly when the Jonathan Hall recommendations will be implemented, and will he commit to implementing them in full?
Well, I'm grateful to him. I know that he will understand that it isn't for me as the Security Minister today to set out parliamentary business in the future. I think I would get myself in quite a lot of trouble with the Leader of the House, and no doubt others were I to do so. But he will have heard the commitments that have been made by the Prime Minister, by the Home Secretary, by the Foreign Secretary and myself. We have accepted Mr Hall's recommendations. It is an important piece of work that he delivered at the behest of the government, and we will move at pace in order to make good on those commitments. But he should understand, and the House should understand, that we won't wait for that in order to take the necessary actions to keep the public safe.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to share with the Minister some distressing words I've had from a wonderful man, Dr. Rabbi Neil James, who leads the South Buckinghamshire Jewish community that many of my Jewish constituents are members of. He says that after the recent attacks, that they're becoming more than just one-offs, and that the unacceptable strain on Jewish life has been normalised. Now, the South Buckinghamshire Jewish community don't have a building. They meet in different places around the area, and because of that, they do not qualify for funding from the Faith Communities Security Grant. Yet Rabbi James tells me that at the same time, after every attack, they have to become more secretive in where and when they meet. That is unacceptable for any group in our society. So can the Minister, on top of the words he has given, and I accept his words, I think he is a good minister and I have faith in him, give South Buckinghamshire Jewish community and every Jewish community in our country the concrete steps that he is going to take to ensure that they are safe and can live freely in this country?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to him, and the words that he's spoken from his constituent are deeply concerning and totally unacceptable. I hope that he will acknowledge that the government has put a lot of money into protecting places of worship right around the country. But given the particular circumstances of the case that he has raised, perhaps he might drop me a note with the details, and I give an assurance I will look carefully at it and see what we can do.
David Taylor.
Deputy Speaker, this is not a series of isolated crimes. This is a frequent pattern of repeated targeting of Jewish sites and communities across London, designed to intimidate and make people feel unsafe during their daily lives. If foreign-linked actors like Iran are using individuals here in the UK to carry out attacks on Jewish sites, that is not just a policing matter, it is, of course, a national security issue too. Meanwhile, I again raise the urgency of the financial sanctions that are needed on Iran's Press TV, where Palestine declassified broadcasts information on Jewish charities, whilst its anti-Semitic presenters have suggested direct action on Twitter against Jewish community institutions as appropriate. Now, I'm grateful for the Minister for his update and the answers that he's given, particularly the answer on charities. But could I urge him to meet with me and other concerned MPs and the CST to discuss how this government's approach to anti-Semitism and the security of Jewish communities can be further strengthened?
Minister.
I'm very grateful to him, and of course I'd be very happy to meet with him and the CST, who I engage with on a very regular basis. He's right to describe this as a pattern of behaviour, and I hope he accepts the point I'm making, that we're doing everything that we possibly can, not just to deter and disrupt this activity, but to defeat it. And he will have seen that we have had decisive action over the course of this weekend, 15 arrests. Now, I'm clearly not going to prejudice ongoing investigations, and we don't know quite where the investigation will lead. But that is a very significant level of activity by the Metropolitan Police over the course of the weekend. And as I said in my earlier remarks, anybody who is considering undertaking this kind of activity at the behest of some other entity for payment should have a very long, hard think about doing it.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In 1945, 300 Jewish children who'd survived the Nazi death camps arrived in Windermere, and where they received a welcome beyond their wildest dreams. In the years that followed, they fell in love with this country, they contributed hugely and leave a legacy which we are deeply proud of. Yet today, so many British Jews are fearful, and that welcome feels a distant memory to many of them. It feels very remote. The story of the welcome of the Windermere children, that is the story of the real Britain. That is the story of what we are really like when people come here seeking refuge and indeed accepting communities of all kinds. I wonder if the Minister would agree to meet with me and the families of the Windermere children so we can talk about how their legacy can be used today as a positive message as we once again go toe-to-toe with the evil that is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to him for raising the points in the way that he has. And he's absolutely right. This abhorrent targeting has no place in our society, not now, not ever. I think it's probably worth making the point that whilst I completely accept his characterisation of many British Jews currently feeling fearful, I think it is also important to make the point, and I saw this myself this morning, that the resilience and enduring decency of our Jewish communities, looking out for each other and working with a range of other community groups, is incredibly inspiring and impressive to see. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. That is a real light in a moment of darkness. To answer his question directly, yes, of course, I'll be very happy to meet with him and his families.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. To follow on the point from the Honourable Gentleman from Mid-Buckinghamshire, I think it is absolutely right that we are normalising too many aspects of anti-Semitism in this country, because it doesn't start with the attacks on places of worship and on clearly Jewish building. It starts with the words and actions of individuals that seek to demonise Jewish people in day-to-day language. It starts with the Deputy Leader of the Green Party publishing a list of British Jews and calling them part of the Israeli lobby. It starts with the Deputy Leader of the Green Party putting out a list of British Jewish donors saying they are part of the Israeli lobby. It starts with that soft approach to demonising a small group of people because of their faith. And so, as was pointed out by my honourable friend from Hemel Hempstead, is the Minister able to set out what action is being taken across government, not to deal with the instances after the event, but to tackle that root cause of this scourge of virulent racism that's being normalised by too many people in this country who ought to know better?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to him, and I hope that across this House there is an absolute shared endeavour and a determination to ensure that this does not become a new normal situation that we have to endure with. None of us want that to be the case. He's right to raise the importance of tackling the root causes, and hopefully you would have heard the answers that I gave earlier. But he's also right to make the point that this is work that needs to be properly coordinated across government. So whilst there is a very important role for MHCLG in terms of leading this work, it does need a whole of system and a whole-of-government response. And I've given him assurance that through the Home Office, through the Cabinet Office and with other supporting government departments, we make sure that that is the case.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to commend the police and the fire brigade for their prompt action in the early hours of Sunday morning. It was a reassurance patrol that spotted the firebombing of Kenton Shaw and actually prevented the Shaw from burning down completely. So that's welcome. Equally welcome is the extension of the Section 60 notice, not just to Barnet, but to Harrow and Brent. And that's to update the Minister. I think that's been announced while he's been on his feet. But what we have to recognise is that this is a series of terrorist attacks. There are terrorist attacks on the Jewish community, and I've got people contacting me saying, am I safe in my own home, let alone going to the synagogue? That is a disgrace on this country, and we have to take action immediately. So will he not only look at prescription of the IRGC, but obviously look at the prescription of Ashab al-Yamin immediately, so that membership of that organisation is a criminal offence, and equally make sure that the charities behind these people, the Dar al-Kamiyya and the Abra Islamic Foundation, which I wrote to the Minister on a year ago, are actually prescribed as well as the 16 other charities, Islamic charities, that have been prescribed by the Arab states. The reality is that we have to take prompt and firm action to stop this terrorist activity now. What starts with the hate marches ends up with synagogues being burnt and Jewish people feeling unsafe.
Well, I'm grateful to him, and I agreed with pretty much all of what he said, and I join with him in commending the important work of the police and the fire service. I can give him an assurance that with regard to matters of prescription, and he knows it's a very long-standing policy of successive governments, that we don't talk about prescription because that is helpful to our adversaries. But we do look very carefully at the extent to which we can deploy prescription in a meaningful, targeted and effective way. But he should also understand, and I know that he does, that that is but one tool in our armoury. There are many other things that we can do, and there are many other things that we are and will do.
Barry Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The hate-filled attack on the Kenton Synagogue in my constituency of Brent West is the latest in the series of disgusting attacks on Jewish buildings that the Minister outlined. But these are more than attacks on buildings. They are calculated attacks on the whole Jewish community, designed to destabilise and instill widespread fear. This is the very definition of terrorism. I'm grateful to the police for their swift response and for the arrests that they've made in relation to some of the attacks. But I believe it's vital that the government and the Met do treat these as terrorist attacks, not simply as criminal damage. I'd also ask that the Home Office and perhaps the Home Affairs Select Committee examines the involvement of foreign actors and the ease with which they are able to launch such attacks. For too long, London has been regarded by some hostile regimes as a safe base from which to operate and where money can be laundered. That British Jewry lives under the dark shadow of anti-Semitic hatred is something which, sadly, we have all come to understand, but must never come to accept. I pay tribute to the work of the CST and to the security personnel at Kenton, who are always there to greet those of us who visit to ensure the safety of us and the whole congregation. In the London Borough of Brent, we like to pride ourselves on the multicultural nature of our community and the harmony between all those from different faith and cultural backgrounds. But good community relations have to be worked at.
Order. I'm sure the honourable member will ask his question. Barry Gardner.
Yes. I'd ask the Minister to reinforce the fact that those good community relations are not simply built on the toleration of the views of others.
Minister.
Well, he's right to raise the importance of community relations, and he's also right that we've seen a number of clearly calculated attacks in recent times. I know that he will understand that I do not want to get in front of an ongoing live police operation, so it's not for me to categorise the nature of these attacks. But I would again make the point that the Metropolitan Police have arrested a number of people over the course of the weekend. So should there be any further consideration by individuals of conducting any more of these attacks, I would strongly advise them against doing so.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the arson attacks targeting synagogues in recent days is sadly part of a pattern of escalating anti-Semitism designed to intimidate Jewish people, leaving them fearful for their safety. This kind of vile form of racism can never be tolerated. We must act collectively to defend the Jewish communities. Given the potential links between recent attacks, will the Minister keep the Scottish Government updated of this developing threat so that we can work together to protect the Jewish community in Scotland?
Well, I'm grateful to him for the point that he's made in the way that he's made it, not least because it gives me an opportunity to make the point that whilst primarily we are talking about London today, my concern exists about these kind of activities right around the country. To answer his question directly, yes, it is always my default instinct to work closely with colleagues in the Scottish Government, and I give him assurance that that is what we will do.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Walthamstow stands shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish community in this country in standing up to these people trying to divide our nation. We recognise the pain and fear in our local community too, and we are shocked to discover that some of those who are being charged with these offences are from our local community. We also understand this pain firsthand because in February 2025, there were attacks organised online against our local mosques in the same fashion that were reputed to be associated with Russian Telegram attacks. It's right to hear the calls for prescription, but can the Minister update us, because this is a relatively new form of terrorist association online, young people, teenagers being recruited to conduct these offences from our communities. What more can we do to disrupt the recruitment by these hostile states?
Well, I think my honourable friend makes a very important point. I can give her an absolute assurance of the seriousness with which operational partners, the National Crime Agency, intelligence services, the Metropolitan Police and others take these particular threats. It's the job of government to make sure that they have the necessary resources required to conduct this work. She's right to raise concerns about activity in the online space, but I give her an assurance that we take this very seriously and we're working at pace to make sure that anyone conducting this kind of activity is brought to justice.
Joy Morrissey.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in Germany in the interwar period, university students protested for months before violence erupted amongst the Jewish community. Why are we allowing these patterns to take root here and allow modern-day pogroms to patrol the streets of London, and then we're surprised when violence erupts? If this is not stopped, we know what the historic outcome will be. Will the government commit to taking swift action? And why won't the government ban the IRGC?
This government will take swift action, and that's precisely why the Home Secretary commissioned Lord Macdonald to look at the issues that she's raised, and I know that she will have heard the response I've given about prescription previously.
Kim Johnson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, every community should feel safe. So does the Minister agree that we must condemn racism in all its forms, anti-Semitism and the abuse and intimidation directed at mosques and other minority ethnic communities, including at asylum hotels by the far-right terrorists? Government's approach appears inconsistent in its handling of visas for divisive far-right figures such as Valentina Gomez. Her entry has now been blocked, but why was her visa approved in the first place, given the clear risk that she posed to the safety and cohesion of our diverse...
Order. These questions are just too long. Minister. No, sit down, please. Minister.
Does the Minister agree all communities should be safe?
The honourable member will respect the chair. Minister.
Every community must feel safe, and this government will defend racism wherever it raises its ugly head.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, I had the privilege of visiting Auschwitz, organised by March of the Living UK. I joined 200 members of the British Jewish community and almost 8,000 from around the world. We marched between Auschwitz and Birkenau. Many were Holocaust survivors. I heard their stories from the 1930s and 40s and from today, including how they have an exit plan in many cases. We were escorted by security the whole time. Will the Minister provide much-needed assurance to our Jewish community in the UK by explaining what steps are being taken to address rising levels of anti-Semitism here? And will he make a commitment to act significantly enough to reassure British Jews that they don't need a plan B?
Well, I'm grateful to her, and I will provide her that assurance. I'm also grateful that she mentioned her recent visit to Auschwitz. I visited Auschwitz with the Holocaust Education Trust. It was one of the most moving things I've ever done, and I'd recommend that all members do it.
Calvin Bailey.
Deputy Speaker, I joined East London and Essex Liberal Synagogue for a Seder this month. They and all our Jewish communities are loved and respected, something which has been made clear to them in the many written messages from our churches, mosques and from across the community. But I truly regret not speaking out louder and calling out the very clear increases in anti-Semitic bigotry across society, which has created the fertile ground for malign actors to target young people and draw them into these appalling crimes. Can the Minister describe what measures he is taking to educate the public about the tactics being used by hostile states to target our Jewish communities and the solid steps he's taking to address the apparently escalating frequency of these attacks?
Well, I'm grateful to him. He's right. We all have an absolute responsibility to call out racism and bigotry wherever we experience it. He's also right that there are a range of malign forces seeking to sow division and disharmony across our country and in our communities. I can give him an absolute assurance that there is an extensive programme of work across activity, working across government departments to making sure that we have the requisite tools and resources to counter the mis and disinformation of those who would seek to divide us.
Lisa Smart.
Madam Deputy Speaker, our Jewish community has contributed to our national story for centuries, and we are right to be proud that our country welcomed citizens to our shores as they fled persecution from elsewhere, including my nan, who came here in the late 1930s fleeing the Nazis. Now, much of the discussion this afternoon has understandably been about those from overseas who are seeking to stoke division and hatred and anti-Semitism in the UK, and I welcome work from the government, including the Rycroft Review and amendments coming to the Representation of the People Bill about funding those who seek to divide us. But there are those in this House who are funded by known anti-Semites. These are British anti-Semites. I wonder if the Minister could tell us more about what he's doing with colleagues across government to tackle those who are funding those who seek to divide us.
In the sense that we should and are, I think, very proud of our collective Jewish heritage, and I pay tribute to her nan. I hope that she would acknowledge that the Rycroft Review is an important step forward in terms of tackling some of the issues that she's raised. And I hope that she understands how seriously we take the commitments that we've made. And as the Secretary of State for MHCLG has described, we'll bring forward amendments as soon as we can.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. All my life the UK is becoming a more tolerant society, so it really does pain me that in recent years we've gone backwards. And that's particularly true of the hate and violence faced by the Jewish community. And it's why I think it was right that Kanye West was banned from entering the UK. Last week I attended the Yom Show event, which is right next to Parliament, which marked the ending of the Holocaust. And it was really reflecting on the fact that while the Jewish community came together to mark the end of the Holocaust, they recognised there were still challenges ahead in the UK, which should shame us. Now, the Minister's linked some of the recent violence in the UK to the Iranian state. What action will we take if there's found to be any connection between the people arrested and the Iranian state? The previous government cut off diplomatic relations with Iran and its barbaric regime. Will they follow that?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, at moments like this, it can be tempting to focus on those who would seek to divide our communities. But it is also important to reflect, as I have previously, on the extraordinary good work that we also see in communities right around our country. In terms of the point he made at the end of his remarks, the National Security Act provides us with the legislative framework we need to take action against those who would seek to undermine our national security, and we will make sure that we do everything that we can to keep the public safe.
Andrew Snowden. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very proud to represent Lancashire's only synagogue in St Anne's in my constituency, and many of the members of that congregation tell me about the difficulties, the fear, the intimidation their friends and family feel as UK Jews around the country. And they're not interested in new strategies and plans and initiatives. They're interested in seeing the handcuffs slapped on those who preach anti-Semitic hatred on our streets, not after the attacks have taken, but preemptively for those who spill that bile on hate marches and in extremist content in mosques across the country. So what action is the government going to take to increase the number of arrests of those preaching hate before it becomes too late?
Well, I've described the actions that we are going to take, but I think it is also important to recognise the work that the police do, often under very difficult and challenging circumstances. I think it has been a very impressive response from the Met over the past few days. We need to make sure that they've got the support in order to continue that. And if he's got any particular issues with regard to his local synagogue or his local community, I'd be very happy to meet to discuss it.
Carla Lockhart.
Madam Deputy Speaker, recently the government brought forward very specific legislation to protect the Islamic community, ignoring, I believe, the very real and greater threat to Jews in the UK. When are we going to see specific legislation to protect Jews and indeed Christian preachers across this United Kingdom?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry to say that the Honourable Lady's characterisation, I think, is not a fair one. I've been incredibly clear about the work and the support that we're providing to Jewish communities. That is something we take incredibly seriously. Where there is a requirement to do more and do things differently, we won't hesitate to do so. Where we need to introduce new legislation, we won't hesitate to do so. This government will ensure all communities are kept safe.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently had the pleasure of attending a Passover service at Harrogate Synagogue. It saddens me whenever I meet with the Jewish community there, they always talk about their security and safety, and it's a topic that always comes up. In light of the Chief Rabbi making comments that attacks on the Jewish community are gathering momentum, can I press the Minister on what further steps he's taking to protect Jewish communities like mine in Harrogate?
Minister.
Well, we've invested records amount of money in terms of ensuring that places of worship right around the country have got the support and the security and the defences that they require. That is a priority for the government. We will always want to make sure that people can practice their faith and go about their business unimpeded by some of the threats that we have taken. I give him that commitment, and the fact that we've brought forward record levels of resource, I hope demonstrates the seriousness with which we take it.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first join the Minister in condemning the attacks in Finchley, Hendon and Harrow, 4 attacks on Jewish sites in London in a week. It is heartbreaking that the Jewish community is once again facing horrific anti-Semitic abuse, just under a month after the events at the Atzola ambulance station. Tragically for our Jewish friends and neighbours, these attacks are no longer a surprise. Hate crime in London is rising and it demands a response. The Metropolitan Police must be given the resources they need to monitor vulnerable neighbourhoods and protect communities, and I welcome the measures outlined in his statement. But can I ask the Minister what assurances he can give Londoners that police officer numbers will be increased and not continue to decrease to stamp out hate crimes in our capital?
Minister.
The Policing Minister and the Home Secretary and myself and all of our ministerial colleagues will do everything that we need to do to make sure that the Metropolitan Police and all police forces around the country have got the resources that they need to do this difficult job. Yes, there are moments of challenge, but we will ensure that our response is proportionate to the nature of the threat, and whatever that takes, we will provide it.
And the final question on this statement, Jim Shannon.
Thank you. Can I thank the Minister very much for the steps he's taken to protect Jews and their property in the United Kingdom. The latest Panorama documentary indicated and highlighted that 1 in 5 Jewish people would consider moving due to the rise in anti-Semitism, and highlighting disturbing news that more British Jews have moved to Israel in the past 12 months than any other year since the turn of the century, over fears for safety. and play a major role in this. Will the Minister outline what proactive steps have been taken and what steps can be taken to enhance security and to send the message that British Jews are as valuable and protected as much as any other British people? And what will be done to persuade them to stay in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to him, not least because he's someone who's consistently advocated for the freedom and rights of people to exercise their religious belief and to worship in a safe and free way. I think it perhaps provides an opportunity to pay tribute to the important work of the Community Security Trust. The government is proud to partner them. We've put forward record levels of investment to support their work. They do an extraordinary job and we should all be very grateful to them for it.
Right, that completes the statement. Let the front bench change over. I call the Leader of the Opposition to make an application for leave to propose a debate on a specific and important matter that should have urgent consideration. Under the terms of Standing Order number 24, the honourable member has 3 minutes in which to make the application. Kim May, not Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to propose that the House debate a specific and important matter that should have urgent consideration, namely that this House has considered the matter of the government's accountability to the House in connection to the appointment of Peter Mandelson. This is a matter of national security because the Prime Minister has admitted appointing a known serious security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. This goes beyond Mandelson's close relationship to a convicted paedophile. Today, I raised deeply concerning ties to the Kremlin and China, which the Prime Minister admitted
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you? Good to see you. We have a packed house, and I have 2 very special guests with me today. I will start with some scheduling announcements. Tomorrow afternoon, President Trump will travel to Las Vegas, Nevada to hold a roundtable and deliver remarks on the working families tax cuts. On Friday, President Trump will travel to Phoenix, Arizona to deliver remarks at a Turning Point USA event at Dream City Church. And I'm really honored to be standing here today on Tax Day with 2 esteemed members of the President's Cabinet and his excellent economic team, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler. As we have seen this tax season, President Trump's working families tax cuts have put a historic amount of money back into the pockets of the American people this year. On the campaign trail in 2024, President Trump looked voters in the eye and promised them he would sign the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. And on Independence Day last year, President Trump and congressional Republicans delivered, passing the largest tax cut in history for working and middle-class Americans, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security. They also passed unprecedented tax relief for small businesses, farmers, workers, and families. With tax day officially here, the numbers prove these tax cuts have been nothing short of extraordinary. More than 53 million filers claimed at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. The average refund this filing season is more than $3,400. The Trump administration has issued more refunds and larger refunds than in any year of the history of our country. And I will allow Secretary Bessent to break down the numbers in greater detail. President Trump and Republicans in Congress have always believed that the American people know how to spend their money better than the government does. But what the American people must not forget is that every single Democrat in Congress voted against these tax refunds. The media has largely omitted this fact and other critical details in their stories covering the benefits of the Trump tax cuts. If the Democrats in Congress had gotten their way and blocked President Trump's historic legislation, Americans would have faced the largest tax hike in history, nearly $4 trillion. The average taxpayer would have seen a 22% increase in their tax rates. Democrats in Congress have proven over and over again that they are the affordability frauds who believe the government should keep more of the American people's hard-earned money. This president and Republicans in Congress fundamentally believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned paychecks. It's a clear contrast for American families to keep in mind. So with that, I will turn it over to our great Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and then he will turn it over to Kelly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Caroline. I'm here to tell you that it has been a fantastic tax season. It has gone smoothly. It has gone efficiently from the point of view of the IRS, but most importantly, it's been a great tax season for the American people. Thanks to promises made, promises kept, through the working families tax cuts, the president has delivered the record refunds to the American people. More than 45% of the filers of the returns that we have seen have had at least one of the 4 president's signature policies. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the deductions for our great seniors, and the deductibility of interest on auto loans for American-made cars. And I will tell you that the biggest, one of those that Americans have taken is no tax on overtime. And it's the American way. If you want to work longer hours, you get to keep more of your money. And with that, we are seeing, I want to encourage everyone out there watching today to change their withholding if they haven't already done so, because if you change your withholding, then you will get an automatic real wage increase on a weekly or a monthly basis, and you will be able to keep more of your money this calendar year. So with that, we have also seen with the Trump accounts, we have had 5 million families file for Trump accounts for their children. 1.2 million of those are eligible for the $1,000 seed bonus. So we look forward to that picking up more and more. For those of you who haven't done it, it's easy to remember, Form 4547. You can do it while you're filing your taxes. You can do it at any point during the year. We think this is going to be transformational in terms of financial literacy. This is Financial Literacy Month, and at Treasury and all over the administration, we are working with the American people, with American families, not only to give them more of their money, but to show them how to invest it in a safe, smart, and sound way. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Great. Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here on Tax Day, important day for small business because small business and their employees have real relief thanks to President Trump's working family tax cuts. As Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, it is my great honor to serve our great president as the cabinet-level voice for America's 36 million small businesses. President Trump is right. Small business is big business. Indeed. They are a massive economic engine that creates 2/3 of all new jobs. They represent 99% of all businesses, and they drive about half of our GDP. The working family tax cuts are putting money back into the pockets of the hardest working Americans. That's why small business and their employees are benefiting the most. President Trump and congressional Republicans have saved Americans from a $4 trillion tax hike, including a staggering 20% tax increase on working families. It would have destroyed millions of jobs. Now, I've traveled the country from Maine to Alaska, and not a single worker, not a single small business asked to pay $1 more in taxes. Yet every single congressional Democrat voted to raise taxes, not just on small businesses, on our workers, on our seniors, on hardworking families. Thankfully, Republicans united behind common sense policy of letting Americans, not Washington bureaucrats or fraudsters, keep more of what they earn. Now, so far, as you've just heard, 12 million small businesses have an average tax saving of $7,000. The 20% small business pass-through deduction is now permanent, offering them certainty to plan for the future and the rocket fuel to create 1 million new jobs. Eric Williams at Prince Manufacturing in rural Georgia. He specializes in fabrication and machining. This year, he's reinvesting his tax savings to hire 500 new employees. The provisions for 100% expensing of equipment, expansion, and R&D are also growing production to help us reclaim industrial dominance. At Blue Patriot Fab, which I visited this week in Omaha, the owners highlighted one of their newest buildings, and they call it the Big Beautiful Building because the tax cuts helped them build it. Made in America is back, and that's why the America worker is winning too. No tax on tips and overtime means that millions of employees are now rewarded, not punished, for working more. And it's already benefited, as you just heard, 31 million taxpayers. In Baltimore, John and Tony Minidakis are proud second-generation owners of Jimmy's Seafood. Now, with no tax on tips and overtime, their 200 employees know that coming into work means going home with more pay. And Wade, a CNC machinist that I met at Lehigh Valley Plastics in Pennsylvania, said he routinely takes on extra shifts, and now the tax cuts reward his extra effort. And the benefits aren't just for tax season. As you've heard, the Trump accounts are connecting young people from birth to the power of our free enterprise system. With 529 savings accounts and Workforce Pell for trade schools, we're now training the next generation of skilled workers to fill millions of open jobs at small businesses. So in closing, America is open for business again. Yet every Democrat voted no on the very tax relief that is restoring Main Street, that is putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking families. Small businesses are rebounding from years of Biden inflation, decades of unfair trade, and massive regulatory overreach. But thanks to President Trump's tax cuts, they now talk about expansion, hiring plans, and generational opportunity. This is America First in action. Lower taxes, rising wages, and a thriving Main Street. Now millions of Americans are getting their largest tax refund ever, and Main Street is getting historic tax relief to keep the American dream alive. Thank you.
Good. And before we take questions, I want to provide some numbers for you all. So tax day statistics as of April 12th. Over 53 million filers, nearly 45% claimed one of President Trump's signature tax cuts. The average tax cut for filers benefiting from one of President's new tax cuts is over $800. Over 6 million filers have claimed no tax on tips with an average deduction of $7,100. Over 25 million filers have claimed no tax on overtime with an average deduction of $3,100. Over 30 million seniors have claimed the enhanced deduction for seniors with an average deduction of $7,500. And over 1 million filers have claimed no tax on car loan interest on American cars for an average deduction of over $1,800. The average refund this filing season is over $3,400. Over 34 million families have claimed Republicans' enhanced child tax credit, which is permanently doubled and expanded by the working families tax cuts. Over 105 million filers have claimed the permanently doubled standard deduction, simplifying tax filing for millions across America. So, as much as people do not like to pay their taxes, and we saw a survey today that 70% of Americans still believe that they are overtaxed, this is a great day for the American people.
Thank you, Scott and Kelly. We'll now open it up to questions. You're welcome to ask me questions or either of the great cabinet officials next to me. And we'll start, as always, with our new media seat. Mr. Posobiec, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary Bessent, if I may, there's been this media narrative out there that while we see the data on tax refunds, that it's not good enough, that the tax season has been too soft. What is your response to this media narrative regarding the tax refunds?
Look, it's been an incredible tax season. We have done more with less at the IRS, that we have moved over millions of taxpayers to digital tax accounts, and that leaves us able to service more taxpayers in person and on the phone. And as we can see, the economy was very strong. We are seeing growth across the board in all areas, and as Kelly said, small business, Main Street are really the big beneficiaries, and this is what they don't want you to hear. That Wall Street always done great. This administration is focused on parallel prosperity and bringing prosperity back to Main Street, and that starts with people keeping more of their money.
And one for Caroline as well as the administration in general, if I may. This past Saturday, I published a video of now former Representative Eric Swalwell in bed. The president's heading to Las Vegas. Well, Eric Swalwell was in Las Vegas in this video. I'm told, according to geotagging, this scandal has erupted now. Accusers coming forward, many others coming forward, as well as questions regarding his extremely close relationship with Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. And I want to know if the administration had any comment on the fact that Senator Gallego seemed to be very vocal about wanting the release of the Epstein files, and yet when questions come to his own involvement with Eric Swalwell, he doesn't seem to want to provide anything.
Yeah, look, I think the accusations and allegations against former Representative Swalwell are despicable and disgusting. I think it's also quite plausible, as you point out, Jack, that there were many other Democrats in this town on Capitol Hill who knew about his perhaps illegal behavior, certainly his disgusting and inappropriate behavior, and why were they silent for so long? I think those are questions that must be raised of these sitting representatives, including Mr. Gallego, and I hope that the journalists in this room will do their jobs, and the journalists on Capitol Hill will do their jobs to ask Democrats in power how they knew about such despicable behavior from one of their elected representatives for so long, but never said or did anything about it. So that's what we hope to see as far as the White House and the President is concerned. Thank you. Peter.
Thank you. I have one for you and then one for Secretary Bessent.
Sure.
For you, Caroline, there are now 10 American scientists who have either gone missing or died since mid-2024. They all reportedly had access to classified nuclear or aerospace material. Is anybody investigating this?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Of course, this was supposed to be UKPM doing his thing. It's done. So if you watched it, nice. Thank you for watching. And it was about 3 hours, I guess. But it's done for now. We're gonna be back for another hearing. Let me see. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys are awesome. All right. And yep. See you on the next one.